Hey everybody, welcome to We've Got Ward, a Doof Media podcast series where we expertly dissect and discuss Ward, Wildbow's return to the world of parahumans. My name is Matt Freeman, and this is my co-host, Scott Daly.
Matt, I say hello to you and to all our listeners for the last time.
Scott, this isn't the last episode.
What? You put last on the script title.
Yeah, that's the name of the arc. There's like at least 4 more episodes after this, plus probably an epilogue episode or 2.
Are you sure?
Didn't you read the chapters?
We're supposed to read the chapters? This is the weekly podcast where Matt and I definitely read the chapters in Wildbow's world of creepy wind, tight-fitting ships, and aliens-based death powers as we analyze and interpret this ongoing web serial. This week we begin Arc 20, Last, which may or may not be the last arc of Ward. We're talking about chapters 20.1 and 20.2. Breakthrough joins the rest of the Capes for an all-out attack on the Seamerg and her machine army. Vicky's got her gun back and hears some creepy wind noises, and the attack goes exactly like you think it would. Badly. Then everyone piles into Daddy Defiant's ship as we have a wonderful chapter where all of our disparate characters have what could be their last interactions with each other before the end. Then Vicky calls up Bonesaw and asks her to go full Bonesaw once again. Matt, what do you think of these 2 chapters?
Yeah, I mean, it's really cool because these are, the first 2 chapters of a new arc, obviously. Mm-hmm. And also, I think we have some reason to believe that this is the final arc. And so there's the typical sort of table setting, I think is a word we've used before, essentially setting out what the ideas are going to be, what the character threads are going to be for this arc. But also it's being done, I think, in a slightly different way than usual because this is the last arc, or probably the last arc. It all has this feeling of finality and this is it to it. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, that is it's been. I mean, we had that finality like feeling for like the entire time we had Arc 19 going on, but that was always the. Like, I don't know how to describe what penultimate feels like, but Arc 19 felt like penultimate, right? Like, How would you put to words what that feeling is like? It's like you're almost at the end, but you're not quite there yet. That's what that whole arc felt like. And these 2 chapters definitely feel like the last beginning, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, it sort of feels like a lot of things are reaching their culmination, and we've narrowed down the possibilities to the point where we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but we know, like, just due to the fact that the world is ending, there's kind of a constrained set of options in terms of what can happen. Whereas if you're earlier in the story, there's a lot more optionality in terms of, well, it could go this way, it could go that way. Yeah. And we're still in the middle of things. Whereas now it's like, no, a lot of things have been truncated. A lot of people have died. And we're heading toward some ending or another. Yep.
I mean, when you're in the red zone, there are only a few plays that get you into the end zone. That's a football reference. Did you get it?
I think so.
The point is you have a lot less options as you approach the end because the story does shrink down to just the remaining available options, and that is absolutely where we are. So
yeah, totally.
Still definitely going to be some fun twists and turns as we go through those last moments, but it does feel like we're at those last moments.
I agree. Let's do some quick announcements. So
we got a bunch of them this week. It's a very exciting time.
Right. So the first and the shortest, I think, is that the fan art contest, I think the 8th fan art contest,
yes,
wraps. The submission period wraps up March 4th, which is the day this episode is coming out. So if you're listening to this, the day it comes out, this is it. Please submit. And then the voting will be held, and we look forward to seeing everybody's artwork.
Yeah, well, I think everyone that's submitting probably has already started, I hope. So I don't have to tell you where the rules are, but they are included in the show notes to this episode. So if you're curious about how to submit, that's where that is.
Next announcement.
Oh my God. This is the most exciting one, Matt.
Yes, this is very, very exciting. So as you know, for some time, our friends over on Deep Impact have been planning their all packed up 24-hour live stream. And Scott, do you want to announce the big announcement?
Oh, you're going to let me do it? Oh,
Sure.
That's so nice. Well,
Go for it.
This past week, those guys announced something pretty huge. It's something that we've known about for a while, but we had to keep it secret. But the man himself, Wildbow, will be guesting for an hour. I believe it is an hour, right? Yeah, I should have looked this up. For an hour on Saturday on that Deep Impact 24-hour live stream for just like an interview, a chat about Pact and about writing and about all that cool stuff. I'm so excited for them. I'm so excited to hear this. It's going to be such a good time. And I think we'll remind everyone that this live stream is just a fun thing that they're doing to finish talking about the book, but they're also going to be raising money for a charity I think it's a local homelessness charity in Australia. So while you are tuning in at twitch.tv/doofmedia, give money, help support this wonderful charity. I think we are going to be making some announcements as far as that goes for us, because we are going to appear on the stream. Have we ever said that, Matt? We're going to be there.
Yeah, we're going to be there for one segment. Is it a secret what we're going to be doing? We're going to be doing something fun.
We're going to be playing. It's not a secret. It's on the schedule. The whole schedule's up. We'll put the schedule in the show notes here, but we'll be playing some Pact Dice. I don't think it's technically Pact Dice. I think we're doing a little bit of a different. We're going to be playing some tabletop RPGs with them
stuff.
That's going to be Pact stuff. Yep. And then I will actually be back Saturday afternoon to do a round of Maggie's Madness, which is their version of our March's Madness like character deciding bracket thing. They're doing one for Pact, and I'm going to be there to help them with that for a half an hour. So it's going to be so much fun, guys. I am going to try to attend as much as I can. I'm not as crazy as those guys. I'm not going to stay up for 24 hours, but I'm very excited. I think those guys have been working so hard, and they're at the end. I think they released the last chapter today, so all they've got left is the epilogue episode, and then they're going to do a live recording. Are they doing a live recording of that? Or are they doing a live recording of like their final wrap-up episode? I honestly don't remember.
I don't remember. But you can probably find out if you check the schedule.
Mm-hmm. Which I will promise to remember to put in the show notes.
Absolutely.
I promise.
You'll be able to find it, and we don't want anybody to miss this because it's going to be real fun to be there in real time.
I should have no, because time zone stuff, me telling you what time Wildbow is going to be on would do no good because time zones are weird. So check the schedule. We'll link it in the show notes. Find it. It says right there, Word of God with Wildbow. So it'll be there. Attend the whole thing, but obviously especially that part. Yeah,
attend the whole 24-hour live stream. Don't just leave it on overnight. So speaking of your March Madness, Scott, the voting for the 2020 March's Madness is underway right now. I think the first bracket is open. So
it is. There are 32 matchups going on this week, and that voting will be open until Sunday night at I think 5 or 6 o'clock Central Time. So head on over to doofmedia.com/March Madness and put in your picks. If you are using Firefox, let me just make this note here. If you are using Firefox, for some reason it's real weird. So if you don't see any like applets with radio buttons in them to vote, something's going on with your Firefox. Maybe get rid of your no scripting program or just use another web browser. Sorry about that. I don't know why it happens. It's weird. You figure this company would have this sorted by now because we had the same problem last year, but they haven't. So sorry that's difficult, but that's going to be fun. And we are going to make some of our picks at the end of the show, Matt. We're going to wrap up the show by making some of our own picks for round one. It's going to be fun.
Awesome. Can't wait.
Yeah.
All right, Scott, I think that's it. Let's get on into 20.1.
So many announcements.
I know.
Let's talk about Ward. I'm ready. I'm ready.
So it's 20, it's Arc 20 last. So, I mean, it's funny because it's entirely possible that this is a fake out and it's not actually the last arc, but I just kind of doubt it.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it's fun to be like to think about Wildbow being a little cheeky with us on this arc name, and there will most likely be an epilogue arc after this, so it's like it's not going to be the story is done, and I think it'd be cool if the epilogue's called First. That's my First Light. The name of our epilogue would be pretty fitting. But I do think if we look back at arc 19, as we were talking about at the start of the show, it feels like the penultimate movement of the story. We kind of throughout arc 19 check in with every member of Breakthrough, and we kind of resolve their arcs in one way or another. Rest in peace to my boy Tristan. But the one big arc that is kind of left unresolved are Chris's specifically, and of course our protagonist Victoria's. She's still got some final movements left to make in her story as well. And as we'll discuss later in this episode, I think a lot of the choices that Chris is going to end up making as we move to our conclusion are going to be based around choices that I think Victoria is going to make. Like, I think it's going to be very fitting that Chris could be the key to all this, and how Victoria interacts with Chris could be the key to a lot of this as well.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's really interesting how there was a lot of catharsis for Victoria in arc 19.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
I think the cool thing about a story this complex and a character as complex as Victoria is that there's a lot going on with her, to the extent that I don't think it would have worked for there to be one big climactic moment that is like, that's the culmination of Victoria's character. I think that she needed, and she's in the process of getting multiple important character moments that resolve different things that are going on with her.
Yeah.
The one involving the memories of her family and realizing that she loves her shard and her shard loves her and all that. That was one really important moment that led to a lot of growth and change. But she's not done. There are other things there are other character moments that I think are in the works. Like, I don't think we're done with Victoria, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, well, and I think one of the things largely that stories can do is they have moments where your character comes to some realization, comes to some defining moment of change, and then the book challenges that. It tests that change through conflict, and then we kind of see like what they'll look like on the other side of that. Like, she has come to an understanding, she has come to a love with her shard, and that interaction is going to be tested as we move through the climax of the story, I think. So I think it can both be what you're talking about, and that she's still got some other stuff she's going to have resolved until the end, but it can also be like part of that test. And I think Amy was part of that test, but I think she's going to continue to see it throughout this story.
And I think different members of Breakthrough have sort of also served as different sorts of tests and different things for her to bounce her own issues off of. And Chris is the one remaining member whose resolution we don't have. So I definitely agree that the two of them will be perhaps even sort of in concert arriving at their resolution.
Yeah, and that's what I love so much about it being Chris, is that Chris, from a distance, is a lot of the things that piss off Victoria the most, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot of Victoria's problems kind of rolled up into one character. I mean, we've got our obvious Amy connection. We've got Victoria's difficulty forgiving and accepting things. We've got, a person who's gone through a lot. It's just he's a very perfect character for her finish line to go through in a lot of ways. And I didn't see it coming arcs ago, but I'm really happy it's here.
Yeah, me too. So as we've talked about, the first chapter of a new arc always spends time setting up the main ideas and the themes for the opening chapters, putting the relevant characters in place, and this chapter, of course, does that. The opening lines are a reflection on Victoria's younger self and how much she wanted to be a hero and how bitter and terrifying she finds it to be now.
Yeah, and I think this kind of serves as our connecting threads of this entire chapter. We have this little 3-beat here of Victoria thinking back and apologizing to her younger self. This is the first one here right at the beginning. I love the words here, though. You dreamed about being a hero for what seemed like every moment of every day. It never crossed your mind how cold and bitter it could be. And then she says a little bit later how much fear there would be, or something to that extent. I didn't pull that, but it's really this wonderful moment that establishes this idea of Victoria in the first chapter of the last arc, thinking back to where she thought what she thought being a cape would be and the things she never even dreamed being a cape would be. And it's kind of expectations versus reality coming out here in the final moments of this book.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And what's interesting is I feel confident that when we are able to look back on this arc, we will find some resonance with this idea of her talking to her younger self and expectations versus reality. But within the first 2 chapters, I don't quite get how it's going to fit in yet. And I think that's fine.
I think I'm with you on that. I'm with you. Yeah.
Cool. So, we start out, we establish this blasted, shattered landscape all around her. The wind is whipping around her, and she's taking shelter behind her giant gun, which is just a great symbolic image right there. Mm-hmm. And the text says, "Land was cracked, and from this height, only darkness was visible in the cracks. The sky was fractured, other worlds visible through those fractures. The people, if there were any down there, they were scattered, few, and desperate."
Gosh. I love it, Matt. I love it.
Yeah.
Why do I think this is the last arc? Because of that. Look at that. Look at that right there. The land is fractured. The people are fractured. The universe is fractured. Everything is falling to pieces. And there's only a few people left to try to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. It's all really coming back to Alice in Wonderland.
I like that. Yeah, it is really fun to visualize this. This is one of those. This is one of those descriptions that I just kind of paused and visualize what this would look like.
It's really great. It's really, and I love that darkness is only coming through those cracks. Like there's not even any light coming through those cracks. It's darkness everywhere. I love it.
Yeah, for sure. And then of course we establish our antagonist. It's going to be the kind of the central antagonist for this arc. Maybe. In a certain sense, perhaps, the Simurgh, who sits and waits to be attacked. And basically, I mean, overall, the writing here does a really good job portraying the Simurgh's invincibility, the futility of attacking her, the sense of her just being so far above everything, despite the large number of powerful capes who have come to face her.
Yeah, it's everyone here. I mean, even Legend showed up, right? We talked about last week how Legend wasn't around very often throughout the story, but he's even here now. And I love, once again, like the environments that Wildbow's setting up here, I think are so great because she's standing in this place that used to be a park. It used to be a place teeming with life. There was water, there was grass, there were trees, and it's barren now. It's just barren. And I love this because it's not irony, but like the Simurgh's plan is actually technically the perpetuation of human life, right? Mm-hmm. Like technically she wants to keep life going for a few billion years while she waits for more entities to come back. But I think in this where she's standing, like, is a perfect symbol for the falseness of that idea. She's gonna gift life or prolong life, but it won't be living. Like everything around her is dead. All this and a park, like a beautiful park, a beautiful picture of nature, is dead now. And I just like. It's this perfect idea, like where you can look at her D on the surface and be like, hey, at least we're not all dead. But like this is what it's gonna be like. It's not like, at what point is living not worth it anymore?
Yeah. There was something that it kind of occurred to me belatedly, but she was talking about keeping this going for billions of years. Mm-hmm. And she was talking about like this breeding program, and it's like 1 million years is enough time to make really radical changes to a species. Yeah, so when she's talking about this breeding program over billions of years, I mean, it might literally be that she's going to breed humanity into other things that sort of serve her purposes, and it's really not humanity anymore. That was just something that kind of came to me after last episode.
Yeah, I like that. That's terrifying. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we see this part, Matt. A wing was folded around her upper body, but golden lines appeared and outlined shapes behind the wing. The golden outlines turned red. Labels were traced out in print so small I should have been able to read them. So we have this moment where our villain here is standing before us, and golden lines appear around her, outline her, and then they turn red. And I love this. Like, gold is we've talked about this throughout this entire story. Gold, the color, the use of it has very specific connotation in this story and this world. And we're seeing here at the end that gold is changing to red, which also has a very specific connotation in this world. Like the crystals under, like the shard world is red. And so like there was gold morning at the end of the last book. And here a lot of our a lot of what we're working with concerns red and that color red, and here it's the gold transforming into the red. Like this is the culmination of this story is staking its color claim, kind of.
Yeah, that's a cool idea. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm still not sure if I've puzzled out exactly the distinction between like the meaning of these things, other than by kind of associating between different things that have these attributes.
Sure.
I feel like we ought to sit down and figure this out before the story ends. But yeah, I think it is a cool image.
Mm-hmm.
So one very interesting thing about both of these chapters today is that we've kind of already seen the highlight reel of all of this stuff. You could even say that we've seen every critical plot moment up to the end of 20.2, because everything we see is going according to Z's plan in the sort of the future sight visions that she was showing us in her interlude. And that's all that's happening here. Beat by beat, we're just seeing the things that she expected to happen. And so there's a major element of dramatic irony throughout these first two chapters.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we mentioned last week that now that, we've seen how the future plays out, it's going to make us pay extra special attention to the details of all this stuff as it plays in real time. And you're right. Everything we see in these two chapters, pretty much what the Seamerg saw happens. And we said last week that means something. If Wildbow wanted to demonstrate how the Seamerg was wrong, he would have changed some of this stuff. He didn't, not explicitly, right? Not in a way that we can see it. And I read these two chapters many times, Matt, like really searching for a reason where I could be like, nope, see, it's different. So we're fine. Couldn't find it. So we're kind of forced to conclude that things are playing out exactly the way that chapter said they were, and that therefore the conclusion to this thing, the end of it, has to be a little bit more complex than just, no, the Seamerg was wrong. And that is interesting in its own right.
Yeah, I think everything about these first two chapters, like even down to the description of the Seamerg as if she's like dancing through the fight, is like she has this totally in hand. Mm-hmm. If there is going to be something that derails her plan, it hasn't happened yet.
Yep.
That's yeah. Just so one note, as we begin this chapter, and I think this bears this is consistent throughout both of these chapters, is that Chris is just kind of reintegrated into Breakthrough. He's just kind of at ease among them now.
Yeah, he does kind of just fit in, doesn't he? I mean, yeah. And I was paying special attention. I mean, I'm pretty sure Victoria continues to refer to him as my ex-teammate, but I was like really waiting to hear like, I'm sorry about my teammate. And we don't get it yet, but like, I don't know. I don't think that might not ever happen because, Victoria still has a lot of issues with Chris, but I was waiting for it. But I do like how he's kind of, sparring back and forth with Damsel, who I know is not Swan Song, but is at least there's a little bit in there, right?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of this like inter-team back and forth sniping at each other. And I love Victoria's reaction to this thought, that she sees these two react this way, and she says, I had to wonder if she'd have joined, if we'd managed to figure Chris out and keep him on board. Would he have offered her what she needed to see? And that's a really interesting idea, right? Like, she sees this, and she's saying, if we had kept Chris, would Damsel have joined us as well? Would our team be bolstered by both of these people? And the question you have to ask yourself is like, well, why do you want that? And I mean, the answer is because she cares about both of them.
Yeah. I mean, she's demonstrated before that she sees something of Swan Song and Damsel, and she stayed behind and risked her life to try to persuade Damsel to not keep fighting earlier, and even risked her own death when Damsel was being erratic.
Yeah.
So for sure, yeah, I think she would love that to happen.
Yeah. But I mean, it shows that in her mind, like, Chris is not part of the team. She makes that very clear here. If we'd managed to figure Chris out and keep him on board, but she does see value for him on the team. Like, she sees a place for him still. And I wonder, like, if we'd managed to figure Chris out and keep him on board, that almost to me has a connotation of her seeing it as like a failure on their part to keep Chris rather than a betrayal on Chris's part.
I think you're right.
And that's interesting.
I think that you're right. I think that she feels she let him down. She feels that he was one of the people that she was put in charge of by Jessica. And and like we see throughout these chapters that she is not willing to forgive what he did, but I think she is willing to accept what he did and maybe work past it. At least that's the indication so far.
Yeah, and I think that would be very fitting. So yeah, I'm with you on that.
So as the heroes begin to position themselves to attack the Simurgh, Victoria starts to hear extremely creepy words on the wind, like the like ambient sounds are sort of coalescing to say like, please, sorry, and it's just like you get shivers. It's just
It's
so
fucking
good,
terrifying, and it's so ominous. And so one of the things I'm thinking, Matt, as we kind of chase down the end of this novel, and maybe it's just because I'm also on the last arc of Pact right now as well. I'm trying to get that finished in time for All Packed Up this weekend, and I've got like 5 chapters left. But in Wildbow Stories, at least in 2 of the 2 ones I've read the ends of so far, he seems to do some really interesting things with the protagonist in like the last beats of the story. Like we had the final arc of Worm, in which Taylor slowly transformed or like was transitioned to more and more the Queen Administrator and lost more and more of herself. In Pact, well, I can't spoil that, but if you've read Pact, you know what I'm talking about there. There's some crazy shit going on with the protagonist of that story, and I haven't read Twig, so I can't comment there. The point is I am approaching this final arc with this idea in the back of my head, and I'm looking for something going on internally in our protagonist as we approach the end of the story. And it's not necessarily going to be like a transformation, right? I think this is a very different story than both of those stories, and it has different goals. And so it could be something very different, but I am on the lookout for something different and weird and creepy. And then we open this chapter and we got some creepy wind noises, and my like ears perked up, and I was immediately like, what the hell's going on here? and I have no idea if this is gonna pay off in any kind of way going forward, or if it's literally just setting mood here at the end. But I had this mindset as I read this part, and so I went kind of a little bit down the rabbit hole on it.
I think I might have just taken it more literally than you and assumed that this is the first inklings of the Simurgh's influence kind of scraping it at her mind. And
yeah, it certainly makes sense. Yeah.
Because I don't remember if Krauss experienced exactly this kind of thing, but there was this like ambient, like weird serendipitous things happening and drawing his attention to stuff. So I just literally thought it was like, oh, the Simurgh is starting to fuck with her, and it knows like this is the pathway to get under her skin. And
that's fair.
Yeah, and like the longer you stay around, I mean, it could be that, you know, in terms of a transformation, just being around the Simurgh is going to be just shitty, because it always is. That's the whole point. And that may continue to be true throughout this arc. We don't really know yet. We don't know how dominant the Simurgh is going to be as a plot element. It's funny to me because earlier, you know, an arc or 2 ago, I was thinking, okay, so like we've knocked down the wall between Waste and Victoria. There's going to be some kind of merging between the two, kind of like what happened with Taylor and the Queen Administrator. It's going to be different though, but it's reminiscent of it, and that the story just didn't take that direction. It was more like, if anything, the Queen, Waste just took the opportunity to be a better host, or to be a better symbiote, and
buddy.
And they're friends, and it wasn't at all what we were expecting. And I don't, other than being like a catharsis, I wouldn't have called it a transformation. It's a sort of transformation, but it's not what I was expecting.
Yeah, I mean, we get to see how that new symbiosis like pays off combat wise in this chapter, and it's like incredible. But yeah, I mean, transformation. No, she like mentally transformed in that, like, in that she gets that acceptance and confidence and stuff. But nothing like that. Yeah.
There still could be that transformation coming in this arc, but I feel like maybe we're not going that direction with this story.
Yeah, so. maybe not. It was literally just pointing out that it was on my mind.
Sure. Yeah, it's been on my mind too. I just haven't talked about it because I know that you have only read Worm up to this point. So
not for long.
Yeah, that's true. So Victoria mainly hangs back and uses her laser to shoot at Z's, but she's also cognizant of the risk that her shots could be easily like reflected if Simurgh is carrying any kind of like tinker tech that could do that. And then before long, she gets a message indicating that the machine army has breached containment, which again is something that we expected.
Yeah. So we knew this was coming, and it's kind of like, it's still a bummer. Like, that's the amazing part about it to me is like, we knew this was coming, and yet still like in the moment, I think you get so wrapped up in the battle and Victoria's point of view that it's still, you feel the defeat that she feels, even though it's there.
And also just the fact that like she's been fighting so hard for this world, this second world, and so you feel the loss of Gimel. You're like, oh my God, seriously? Like we fought so hard. You and me, the reader and the character, fought so hard together for this, and we're gonna lose Gimel now. So it definitely sucks.
Yeah, it does. It does a lot. And of course, before we move on from this, we have to hit our second beat in our 3 beat of the I'm sorry, younger me. This one, Victoria says, I'm sorry, younger me. I thought, more than anything else, you thought we'd be confident. You envisioned yourself standing with glowing swords or grenades in hand, unflinching and confident. So I love this as like just this idea that she's looking at this and looking at these losses and how it's shattering her confidence. But also I just love the idea of a young Victoria looking at both of her parents and imagining what she as a cape would be and taking it as an amalgamation of them. It's like, of course, I'm going to have like blades, or I'm going to have like grenades. Of course, this is what I'm going to look like because those are my parents. I love that as a detail. And I don't know if she's ever stated that like that explicitly, but I really liked it.
Yeah, it's understandable and adorable. I like it too. Yeah. So then we skip to earlier, big, section header saying earlier. And this is the meeting before all of these, all of the Simurgh stuff that we just saw, where during this meeting, Narwhal lists off just so many goddamn Titans. Scott, I feel like things might have gotten out of hand.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole lot of names we've heard before, some names we've never heard before. There's a whole lot. I mean, there's so many that Victoria herself, the Cape nerd, is like, I'm not going to be able to remember all these.
Yeah.
I mean, she technically says, I don't think I'd be able to repeat back the ones that are part of Fortuna's cluster at this point. But I just think it's so ironic that there's so many that she's like, I can't say all these back to anyone.
Right.
And she has this wonderful fuck.
Yeah.
We get a lot of F-bombs from Victoria in these 2 chapters.
Right. I mean, I think it's a great thing that Wablo's done to sort of build up the stakes and just the level of things by having it be like, at first there were like 3 and then 5, and we could keep track of all of them and they were all formidable. And now there's like 15, right? And you're just like, okay, all right, this is hopeless. You're not going to be able to win this by like punching these things. You're going to have to find out some other maneuver, which is what they're trying to do, obviously.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty depressing how Victoria sees Byron gravitating away from Breakthrough toward like Vista and or Moonsong, and she thinks that Breakthrough might break up after all of this, and she isn't sure if that bothers her.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I fully agree with you on this one, because while I do love these guys, I love this family, I chose to take this a different way. Like, Breakthrough came together first and foremost as group therapy. That's what originated their group. And is there a possibility that at the end of this road here, they won't need that kind of group therapy anymore? They could still remain friends. They could still remain family, even in some regard, but not as this team, not Breakthrough anymore. Maybe they get out the other side of this and that they realize they don't need that anymore. And I don't know. From that regard, I look at this as not depressing, but like progress.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that just hit you in a more emotionally positive way. I found it very like, I almost found that line more depressing than the like, oh, we've lost Gimel, because I don't really care about Gimel, frankly. I mean, I care as much as the book wants me to care, but I care more about these characters and the idea that like so many bad things have happened that they're just gonna drift apart. It was very sad to me, but I guess you didn't take it the same way I did, so that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think that your read is valid, and that is a possibility. But yeah, maybe it's just the optimist in me that, like Victoria's saying, I'm not so sure that's a bad thing. It's like this group came together. I guess from my part of it, I don't read it as like, we're just never going to see each other anymore kind of thing. Just like that breakthrough as a team, as a concept, is going to stop existing at some point. And I don't know, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I mean, there's also, and this just occurred to me, but it's possible that you could sort of reinterpret this in light of what her plan apparently is. Like breakthrough ceases to exist because there's no more capes or some variation of that. I mean,
that's very true.
That could be what she meant by this thought.
Sure.
Yeah. Well,
I hadn't thought about with that future sight in mind, but I think that there is some truth to that for sure.
Yeah. I'm not entirely sure what all of that is going to be yet. So maybe we'll just hold off on that.
It's a big mystery, right? It's a big mystery.
Yeah. So in the course of this big meeting, Chevy gives a good speech and Victoria says that she almost believes him. But it just seems real bad. So,
yeah. I don't. I think it, like, there's parts of it that I think win her over and win the crowd over still, right? Like, I think there's these moments of like everyone cheers and is happy for a moment, and it goes to show how far a good speech can go. And we have to remind ourselves that we actually, in this part, got to a point that the Seamerg did not see, right? The very beginning of the speech is the part that the Seamerg saw, and then she can't see the rest of it because Dinah starts doing her thing. And so there is this moment where we see, like, in the middle of the speech, we see Chris inject himself with something and then kind of walk away and leave. And he glances over at Thunderdome. And that's Wildbow doing a very good job here of reminding us of the things we learned in 19.z. And of course, as we talked about before, because Vicky isn't privy to that knowledge, he kind of leaves it up to draw our own conclusions about whether that's good or bad. Is this good? I don't think so. I don't know. But Victoria can't really comment on it. Her comment is just like, complicated because she doesn't know the full scope of the meaning behind it, but Wildbow still has her draw attention to it, which helps us draw attention to it.
Yeah, and I like how it's specifically drawing attention in a way that doesn't tell us whether this is good or bad. It's just it's you could read it as, yep, this is domino number 12 in the Seamerg's plan falling over, or it could have been some interesting wrinkle and we're not going to understand the import of it later.
Sure.
I think I read it more as domino number 12 in the Seamerg's plan falling over, and then maybe it's something that we go back later and realize that it was more than that potentially.
Yeah. I mean, that is one of those things that we just will not be able to tell.
Yeah.
But I think you're right.
Yeah. Okay. So Legend then gives a speech, refamiliarizes us with the rules behind fighting the Seamerg, since it's not something that we've really thought about in a while. I mean, we haven't really been in this situation for, over one web serial worth of text. It's kind of been in the back of our mind, but there's certain details like, you get kind of a counter that tracks how compromised you are by the psychic scream, and the idea that, like, the longer you're in her range, the more compromised you get, and at a certain point you're just beyond saving, and kind of he doesn't explicitly remind us, but I think we're forced to recall the guy who Dragon just blew up because he was inside of her range and couldn't be extracted.
Yeah. Hey Matt. Hey, remember when we thought the Seamerg might be a good guy? You remember that?
I do. Yeah.
Oops.
That's some good theory in.
Yeah. We forgot about that whole psychic scream nonsense.
Well, yeah.
No, I do think, like you said, this is a very functional bit of the book that it helps remind us, the reader, about what's going on. It also establishes this idea that to win, we have to win decisively and quickly. And then Wildbow goes on to immediately show that that is not what's going to happen, that a long, drawn-out fight only serves the Seamerg better, and that they don't win right away. So it really helps to really reinforce the hopelessness here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
We do get this moment where Dinah, at the end of the speech, walks up to the leadership and gives them her input. And this is one of those moments where, like, we know she was using her power during this whole thing, because that's kind of what doesn't let the Seamerg see the rest of the conversation, or at least plot out and predict the rest of the conversation. So the question is, what, if anything, did she glean from her power usage here? And how is that going to help them at all? And of course, the book does not answer that question, but it's just out there. But I keep paying attention to Dinah.
I think we're meant to. Yeah. I think this is meant to be a thing where we're either going to find out what she said at some point, or one way or another, we're going to understand what the import of this was, because there was no, like, there's going to be a reason why that happened. Why Dinah asked a question, and then she lost her, Seymour lost her vision of the conference. So.
Yeah, because when I'm looking at 19.z and I'm desperately grabbing for a reason why her plan is not going to go the way she thinks it is, the one part I'm looking at is the part where she says, and then I lost what I could see here, but it's fine. I'm so confident. And so you're desperately looking for this part right here that we're talking about right now. And there's nothing immediately evident in what they're talking about right now that leads me to believe that things are going to be fine.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm latching onto this Dinah stuff because I want it so bad. But I think you're right that it's going to be important. We're going to find some more information with it later.
Yeah. So as the fighting kind of continues, we see Byron's new power, which is pretty cool. It's sort of like a more organic and maybe more versatile version of Tristan's power, which also extends to some control over mist and ice formation.
Yeah, he seems to have different kind of motes, right? Like he's got dark blue ones, and he's got some lighter blue ones that are more his mist, and he's got dark blue ones that do like kind of like a spirally coral conch type spear thingy.
Yeah.
It's cool and I love it, but it also makes me sad because it reminds me that the only reason he has those is because his brother's gone.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, it's super bittersweet it's got to, for us, and it's got to be for him too. It's like, oh, great, my power's like much better now, and it's only because my brother's dead, and now I have both powers. It's almost like the best case scenario. It's like, oh, he just got both powers. That's great, except his brother's dead. So
the shard's helping.
Yeah,
the shard's like, wait, where'd that guy go? Oh, here he is. Here you go.
Yeah, I was confused for a second, but we're good. I don't know if the coral and spiral imagery, I don't know what to make of that, other than it kind of reminds me of like Sveta and her art style.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that means anything.
I mean, I stupidly was just like, oh, his power is water, therefore water things.
Yeah, why not?
That's really the entirety of my thought process on it, which, considering we have a podcast talking about this book, I probably should have thought about a little more. Well, but
there's a lot of details to think about, Scott.
Sure.
I mean, yeah, I don't think I don't know if like I don't know if Tristan having the creepy living dead space creature, power like meant anything other than like, this is horrible. It's a nightmare.
Yeah, so. I do think, like, if I have to look back on what some of the imagery that was really hard for me to parse in this book, the changes in their powers was one thing that I never felt like I had a real firm grasp on. So it doesn't surprise me that continued after Tristan's death.
So I didn't make a note on this, so I'm just going to bring it up now. But a cool thing throughout this fight, and I think one of the things that makes it kind of climactic feeling, is that everybody just goes all out in a way that I feel like this is the max, right? Like stuff like Sveta throwing rain at like ballistic speeds faster than Victoria can even fly, and then him stopping himself in just the right place and then attacking. It's like, oh, that was something that's probably been in the works for this whole book, and it was just like the power synergy that was kind of waiting for this moment. This very serious moment. There's other moments like Victoria, going apeshit with her force field and everything. Using her teeth to bite and stuff like that.
It's cool. It's cool as shit, man.
It is. It is. Yeah. So we go back to the fight, and like there's a lot of good hits being landed, but I think that like the fun thing is that it doesn't feel like a success at any point, at least to me. Like the Simurgh, she's still lining up these like trick shots and nailing them whenever she has to. So
she's like the dude perfect of Endbringers.
Yes. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, you do. They're the guys that went to our college that shoot basketballs.
Oh, yeah, you've told me about this before. Good, yeah. But like it's all underscored and emphasized by the way she just like floats and dances and wades through the battle. These are all the words that are used. Like wades is such a good word, where it's like they're attacking her and she's just kind of like serenely floating through it.
Yeah. It's so indifferent and untroubled. And we didn't pull any of these, but I love the moments in which Victoria is like having to check herself at the way she's describing the Simurgh because she's personifying her in ways that aren't really accurate. It's like she likes to do this, she wants to do this, and it's like that's not really how she works. But Victoria's having to check that because it's like it's coming off as just this like I've won, ha 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 ha, kind of movements,
which is probably all part of the tactic, the demoralization tactic.
Absolutely, yeah.
Victoria notices that Ziz is no longer holding one of the pieces of the machine army tech, and that she has indeed deployed it into a cloud of dust that was created by the fighting, probably all according to plan. And then suddenly there are just machines everywhere attacking from out of the dust.
Yeah. It just keeps escalating, Matt. Mm-hmm. This, like you were talking about a little bit earlier, but this is an action chapter, and everyone's desperate and emotional, and like you were talking about, everyone is working together. Wildbow is cutting from person to person. Like there's so many people like doing all the stops. The people we don't see, we hear. Like we hear Finale singing, we hear Damsel's power go off. Like Chris's giants keep dropping in and injecting in key moments to help like turn the tide of the battle. It is full out everything they've got, and they're not winning. And the part I love about this, the writing here is so oh my God, it is so tough because they're doing all these cool things. There's all these amazing moments. And then it's like, the plan wasn't even like win here. The plan is just fight the Simurgh long enough that she goes away and then move on to the real part of the plan. And then she's like, but we're not even doing this part. We're not even winning that first little part to move on to the other parts.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because and maybe this is like bringing in like too much extra textual knowledge about what the Endbringers are and how they work, but like I was from the beginning of this, and because of the fact that we have foresight of it, I was like, you can't beat an Endbringer. Like they have never even once actually beat an Endbringer. They just fight them until the Endbringer decides that they've killed enough people, and then the Endbringer retreats. So like all of their like so-called information about like this is how you beat the Simurgh is like, no, that's how that worked in the past when she wasn't basically playing for all the marbles. This is not one of her little like culling missions. This is her final gambit, gonna just rule humanity forever mission. And I think that kind of speaks, and maybe I am bringing in like too much extra story information, but also maybe we're supposed to feel totally hopeless about this, because we do already know how this is going to turn out. We already know that this is not going to turn out well. So it's this fight with a very real sense of like it's entertaining. It's a fun fight, but there's a feeling of hopelessness the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, like if he wanted us to give us some hope here, he would have made things clearly different from the way the Simurgh saw them. Like just by continuing along this path that's already been laid out, you're tapping into that feeling of hopelessness. So I think you're right there. I think we're supposed to feel like just as shitty as not just as shitty, even more shitty than Victoria does here. Like it's not often in this book that we, the reader, like feel less optimistic than Victoria about certain things.
Right.
And yet that's the place we've been put, because we see how bad it is for her in this moment. We know it's even worse than that.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, good point. I like this little kind of like interlude of several paragraphs where Vicky just gets to nerd out about all of her knowledge about the machine army, like from the days back when it was contained.
One last time to nerd out about things, Scholar Victoria.
Yeah.
I think the important bit we get gleaned from this section is that the machine army historically works very, very slowly. Like, if they will change to a tactic that you're using to hem them in, it takes months and trial and error to change to that tactic. It is not something that happens like they poke the fence and then they get shocked, and then 5 seconds later they poke the fence with a shock immune thing, right? Like it takes time. It's slow. But what we're seeing right now is that it's not slow. They are adapting immediately, instantly. And that is another way in which all of the old tactics, you talk about the old Simurgh tactics, all of the old machine army tactics are just useless here as well, because nothing is following the pattern that it had before.
Yeah, there's this moment later when Victoria points that out. She's like, they're reacting too fast, and Defiant's like, well, it could be that they already developed this tech and that the Seamerg just kind of like orchestrated this to make it appear that they just developed this tech. And I'm like, I don't know, man. It seems like everything's actually as bad as it seems like it is, Colin.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's cold comfort anyway. And it like, he's so bad at comforting anyone.
Yeah.
I can't wait to talk about that chapter.
Yeah. So I think this bit of the fight where Vicky finds the portal drone in the mist and then fights it alongside Sveta is probably my favorite section of the battle.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is really the moment where we see Victoria's newfound acceptance come to fruition here, right? She's expanding and retracting her force field at will. She's creating mouths to bite through things. She's creating arms to rip things apart. She spins to make the drill. It's the culmination of a book's worth of things that she could do all at once because she's got full control of this. And it's so great. It's so cool. I really, really like it.
Yeah, it's very fun. And like the threat level is very high and sort of exciting and horrifying too. Like I love this description. One grapple claw latched onto me. The rectangular box that was attacking me opened up, revealing the meat that coated the inside of the box's walls, and the creature within, half melted, burned, with empty sockets for eyes, human in silhouette, reached for us with a club-like hand. Yeah, it's great. It's great how kind of horrifying this is portrayed as being, and also how cool they are for like fighting it off handily.
Yeah. I kind of want to talk to you about that though, because we just spent a bit of time talking about how fucking hopeless and dour this fight is, but then we just started spending a couple minutes talking about how fucking badass this fight is, and those aren't contradictions. Both can obviously be true because they're here right now. But I think that's really interesting in how that's employed, right? Because we can have this fight that is ultimately pointless and still make it engaging to the reader because you're watching your character do really cool shit. And I think like you can kind of you give your reader a break because you get swept up into how cool the shit is. It's almost as like you're in Victoria's head. So Victoria dives into this group of robots and like does this crazy fucking shit in there. And maybe for a moment you forget the stakes of the battle and the doom of this battle. And you're just like, yeah, she's like fucking biting shit and ripping shit apart. And Sveta's right there next to her. And it's fucking awesome. And then you clear the field. Or in this case, what happens is Chris comes in and with the goddess monster and just like freaking owns all the machines in the area. And the dust settles. And then you're just like, oh yeah, it's fucked. And I love that both those things can exist, and I think that makes for an engaging read while also still getting the tone, the hopelessness, the dourness of the situation in hand.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the last few arcs have been about this kind of stalemate nature of the combat. Like they're constantly fighting these titans that they can't ever actually defeat, and they're losing people the whole time, and it's all just this grind. And so I think that is the tone, like almost the sort of futility or like the feeling of never getting ahead is what Wildbow's been, I think, trying to fill these recent arcs with. And I think this, as awesome as it is, it's kind of the same feeling here.
Yeah, I mean, it's designed dissatisfaction, right? Like it's very fascinating. Like it's by its design supposed to be dissatisfying for the characters and the readers on some level. Like you go through this and it's cool and it's awesome, and then the dust settles, and what have you accomplished? Nothing, actually. Nothing. And that's the frustration behind it. And I think you feel that as a reader, and you're supposed to.
Right. I mean, if anything, they got pulled away from a location where they would have been useful.
Right.
Like tactically.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, speaking of which, the Seamer just kind of leaves the heroes behind to clean up all the machine army mess that she created, while she goes to attack the Cauldron base, which is full of thinkers and tinkers that she can utilize.
Yeah. And here at the end of this chapter, we get our final beat and our 3 beat where Victoria says, "I'm sorry, younger me. I feel like you would have wanted to take a stand here. This isn't noble, putting them on the line of fire, but it may be necessary." And so we've got our 3 here. And now that we've got our 3, I think we can look at them a little bit before we wrap up the chapter, Matt. So,
Sure.
and I think an interesting pattern kind of comes to mind when you look at these. I mean, every single one of these beats is a moment where Victoria is thinking back to the her that got the talk from her parents and her aunt and uncle, and the image of what she thought a cape would be. But it's the first one is I never thought about how cold and bitter this could be. The second one is I always thought I was going to be confident. I never thought it wouldn't be like I'd have lack of confidence here. And this last one is I never thought I would make choices like this that I'm doing now. And the interesting thing to me is the first 2 are things that you don't really have control over, right? Like I never thought I never thought how bitter and afraid I would be. Well, you can't, like, sometimes you just feel that way. You can't control that. Right. Like I never thought I would have this little confidence. Well, yeah, I mean, that's another thing you don't have a lot of control over when you don't feel like you have confidence in something. But the last one is an action. It's a choice. Like I never thought I would have to make choices. Like I never thought these are the choices I would make. And yet in this moment, she's saying, "I'm sorry, I'm going to do that." Like I'm going to make the choice. I'm not going to take a stand here because I recognize we're going for something bigger. I am going to be okay with having those people put on the line to go chase something else, something bigger. And I think that's really interesting. It's really interesting that the third beat here is not a perception based thing. It's I am active. I know that the younger me wouldn't want me to make this choice or wouldn't think that this is the choice that hero Victoria would make, but I'm going to do it.
Yeah. No, that's cool. Honestly, I didn't even notice that there were 3 of them. I thought there were only 2. I kind of like mashed together the first 2.
Yeah, well, the first 2 are in kind of rapid succession, and then the last one comes at the very end.
So. But I think they are distinct, though. Yeah, I like how you connected all that together. That's really cool. I wonder if this is going to be a motif. I mean, there aren't any of these in the next chapter, right?
No.
But I wonder if this idea of her kind of talking to herself in this specific way is going to come back. Or just as a concept, even the idea of like thinking about your past self and what you would have wanted.
And kind of maybe accepting or dealing with the fact that, like we said, the fantasy, the dream versus the reality, the fiction versus the fact. And what I like about this is after we get the last beat on that 3 beat, one of the last lines of this chapter is Victoria looking at her group and saying, "On to the next stage of the plan," I said, trying to emulate Chevalier a bit to sound confident, calm. So here at the end, after saying like, "I'm sorry, younger me, I never thought I would be this afraid. I'm sorry, younger me, I never thought I would lack confidence like this." She's gathering those things, or at least trying to project those things anyway. Like it's like this idea that I do not feel that way. This is not who I am, but this is who I'm going to try to project for the good of everyone around me, for the image of that heroism.
Yeah, I like that because, I mean, if she were imagining herself standing there calmly and confidently, and she portrays herself to be standing there calmly and confidently, then the only difference is what is inside her, which is invisible. Which was not part of her fantasy. So,
yeah,
I mean, maybe it was. I don't know, but I like this idea quite a bit, actually.
Yeah.
And then we move on to the next chapter, 20.2. Everybody piles into Defiant's vessel for a flight back to the Cauldron HQ, and we're reminded of the ticking clock. And throughout this chapter, it's kind of emphasized to us a handful of times that the Simurgh is gradually chipping away at the heroes that are back there at the Cauldron base, while our characters are just like trapped completely ineffectually and impatiently in this cramped little ship.
Yeah, and they're flying back, and many of them are going to confront the Simurgh once they get back to Cauldron headquarters and fight them again. But I do like that the way in the opening part of this chapter sets it up is not necessarily like the time limit is chipping away at our friends and family is bad and we need to stop that before it gets too bad. The time limit constraint is chipping away at my friends and family is the last thing the Simurgh is going to do before she goes over and links to Fortuna, and then it's game over. It's like so back to what Victoria was talking about is like, I never thought I would have to put people on the line like this. I wish I could take a stand here. Like the importance of this moment is not solely I have to save the people I care about. It's this is it. This is the end. And I need to do whatever I can to make sure that it is not the end. And I just find that really, really fascinating that like, because we see at the end of this chapter here, Victoria does not rush off to the battle as soon as they land. She doesn't rush out and fly and take a stand and go try to punch the Seamerg again or try to throw her gun at the Seamerg again. She hangs back and takes the call with Bonesaw, knowing that her friends and family are in harm's way, knowing the people she care about are being hurt by the Seamerg as they speak, and knowing that she's not going to be a part of that because she's hanging back to do the more important phase of the plan than that. And that, I think, is unique to this stage of Victoria.
I agree, because we remarked several times on how borderline suicidal a lot of her fighting was relatively recently, like getting herself almost crushed by Scotty and then getting herself almost pincushioned by the other one. I forget their names. It's not Oberon.
I know which.
No, it's not.
No.
It's
Ophion?
Ophion, yeah, that's right. But like now, and that was like where she was emotionally. She was like, I have to feel like I'm doing something, and to feel like I'm doing something, I have to throw myself headlong into these situations. Mm-hmm. And now I think she's past the need to sort of feel that way. She's like, well, this is a bitter pill to swallow. This is the worst thing. This is the last thing I want to do, but it is what is necessary and what I have to do, which is hang back from the fight and have this phone call, which is of much more strategic value.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think that's really important here at the end, that like, it goes back to what we were just talking about in chapter 1, this idea that this is not what I thought being a hero meant. This is not when I imagined what a cape was, when I fell in love with the idea of being a cape, doing that is never what I thought it was going to be. Mm-hmm. But the reality is, these are the choices you have to make. These are the things you have to do. The reality is, it's not glamorous. It's terrifying. You don't know what you're doing. You're scared and you lack confidence, and you have to make the hard, terrible decisions. That's the reality of this. That's what being a cape is. None of the cool stuff. This is it. And it's rough and it's hard. And she's doing it though. She's doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So as they're flying, Defiant gives Victoria access to this like battle simulation software that he has. Mm-hmm. And Victoria kind of tries out a few scenarios in Capecraft and basically finds that they're fucked no matter what. And then Defiant mentions that he's basically running these scenarios constantly and like trying to model what the opponent is doing.
Yeah. And I want to talk about those sims in a bit, but first, 20.1 was almost entirely a conflict action chapter. Mm-hmm. And this is almost entirely a character chapter. And there's a bunch of characters on the ship, and there's a ton of work being done on so many of these characters. And Defiant is one of the big ones, right? Because we establish him as a guy, everyone piles onto the ship and it's crowded, but like nobody's sitting close to Defiant. Mm-hmm. He's got this like almost force field of emptiness around him. And she's the first one that breaks that. And then Sveta joins her as well. And then we have this great moment where Defiant forgets that like human beings can't operate his computer interface the same way, mm-hmm. Because they don't have all the shit that he has inside him. Mm-hmm. And I love that Clockblocker calls him out on that. You're that far gone, Defiant. Forgot about us mere mortals needing keyboards and mice and voice commands to operate tech, which like, man, the dead Clockblocker being brought back to life, calling someone else a mere mortal is fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
But I do think it shows it's really diving into like Defiant as a person, and his solution to this is the karate chop, which is it's delightful. But let's zoom in on those simulations a little bit though, because I think that is more character work on Defiant. You're right that they're completely hopeless, and there's this moment where Vicky like grabs a group of capes and like moves them towards the machine army, and then like half of them die right away, and she's like, "Wait a minute, what?" Mm-hmm. And Defiant is like, "Oh, you can rewind and see what happened. Just check that out." And Victoria's basically like, I don't want to play this game anymore. I don't like it. I don't like it. That was not fun. I don't want to do this anymore. And Defiant's response is, oh, I'm doing that constantly. I always do this. I play through it on fast forward in every battle simulation constantly. And it strikes me, this is why Victoria and Defiant butt heads so much in this book. Because Victoria is smart and she makes plans and she executes on those plans, but she's a doer. She is not going to look at all the variables and all the disparate effects of the choices she made like Defiant is. So that's why Defiant gets so fucking mad at her when she does the Shard World stuff.
Yeah.
It's because she didn't consider that, and he would have considered it. And we learned a little bit later that he couldn't, that his simulations didn't work for that kind of stuff. So it's not like he ran sims and knew it was going to be bad, but to Defiant, acting without running a simulation first is the craziest fucking idea in the world.
And this is her. I mean, you're exactly right. This is probably a character trait of hers that we haven't pointed out enough, but and maybe we have. I don't know. It's been extremely consistent that she throws herself into situations, and she is a brawler. Her power is a close range power, and she just trusts her instincts to help her navigate fairly bad situations.
Yeah.
And it usually works out in her favor. It's funny that the whole source of her trauma was the fact that one time it didn't and she miscalculated. So it's funny that didn't actually teach her to be much more cautious effectively. That was sort of the point of this synthesis between the warrior monk and everything is fight, but be thoughtful. And it's well, she still does throw herself into situations. We just talked about the Ophion thing, which was classic, absolutely classic. In fact, the text, I think, directly compares it to the idea of it being basically the same thing that happened with Crawler, where she throws herself into a situation that's dumb. She gets horribly mutated, and then she has to be fixed by a healer. Works out better for her that time overall. But it's a clear indication of that she's still doing this same behavior. So yeah, you're exactly right about all that.
Yeah, and I think it makes a stark contrast to the end of this chapter where she doesn't do that too. I also like not only does she throw herself into situations, but she also rejects the idea of a simulation. She runs it once, right? And it doesn't work out, and then she's just I'm done. I don't want to play this. I don't want to play this game anymore. And it's just that's not how she operates. That's not how she and Defiant is what are you talking about? Yeah, you have to do that. And it's just it's such a stark divide between these two characters. And obviously we've seen them butt heads again and again throughout the story, but this I think encapsulates the divide to me in a way that I understand perfectly by just the way they each react to the idea of simulations. I really liked it.
Another fun thing about the simulations is just that this is a really cool and organic extension of his old combat assist AI thing that he used to use. It's the same. It's like he's been continuing to work on this project, and it has gone from something in his helmet that kind of tells him what move to make next to this extremely elaborate battlefield scale thing that has all these variables in it that he's just constantly running and rerunning to do inverse modeling of what the opponent is doing. And it's pretty great.
Yeah, there is a clear line that you can draw from one to the other. That's great. I like that. It also, I mean, it makes perfect sense that he's even more obsessed with this idea than before. It makes sense that a person who has made the choices he's made in the past is a little hesitant to trust his gut when he's making these decisions, that he wants to see all the effects of any given choice play out in a simulation before he makes any action.
I like that. And there's one last thing I want to say about the simulation, which is that Victoria explicitly says, oh, so it's kind of like being a precog. And he's like, no, not really. But and I mean, I get that it's not super magic shard bullshit, but it is, it is amazing. It is an amazing piece of software, right?
Oh yeah.
And this is an arc. This is a sequence of arcs, you could even say, that have a lot to do with predestination, future knowledge, future sight, scenarios that are going to come to pass. We saw the vision. We saw Fortuna's vision in the crystals. We saw in the Seamerg's head all these things that are going to happen. And now with this tool, we're getting once again another beat of this idea of a glimpse into the future. It's a different modality, but it's a similar concept that there are all these different threads in this arc, in the beginning of this arc, that have to do with the future, or almost like the certain future that we somehow have to work our way around. And it being very bad also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I like that too. Cause like if you're a guy that needs to run a simulation before you make any action, like, what do you do when all the simulations point to badness? Like, what action do you then take? And I love, this is a Defiant that is kind of cut off from Dragon, because Dragon, I don't think we specifically mentioned that last chapter, but Dragon came in contact with the Machine Army and basically shut down to run diagnostics to make sure that she hasn't been infected by them. And so he's not used to not having her around, and she's not around right now. And so he's like, I think probably even more reliant on his simulations. And there's a nice line you can connect between his reliance on this kind of precognition and Contessa's reliance on her kind of precognition, that when you have this ability to map out the future, it makes you super reliant on it really quickly.
Yeah, and it traps you into pathways that are sort of monstrous, because you're like, well, this is the only available pathway.
Right. Yeah, I really think like the more we deal with precognition in any of its forms, I really think like the human brain is just like not built to make decisions off of information like that. Like it's just like uncertainty is almost key to our decision making process,
or at least our ability to like look in the mirror later.
Right? Yeah. That's a better way of phrasing it.
Because then we can tell ourselves we did our best.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, there's so many great character moments, and I'm not going to pull out all of them. I want to pull out just Kid Win saying about his name. I had ideas. Clock Blocker is trying to convince me of Windman. No, I said. I just lost it at that.
It's just so matter of fact.
Yeah. No. Yeah, I mean, this is great, of course. There's a lot of moments like this, just all these like callbacks and kind of atypical character interactions is, I would say, one major selling point here. Is like you've got Damsel crammed in cheek by jowl with withdrawal next to Clock Blocker 2, and we're just watching them all ping off each other in fun and unpredictable ways, and it's great.
Yeah, and I know we've said this so many times, Matt, but the ways in which Wildbow like drafts a character and then just drops them into situations and is just like, okay, what are they gonna do now, is one of my favorite parts of his writing. And I know he doesn't outline too much. Like, he probably has like a general idea of the movements of the story, like very, very generally. But I think chapters like this, scenes like this, are probably just like, and then everyone gets into the ship and heads back to the Warden's HQ. And then the rest is kind of figured out in the writing, in what is probably this process of like, okay, we have Kid Win in this boat with Victoria and with some other people. What's going to happen there? And then because the characters have been drawn so well, like they just kind of start having a mind of their own and interacting with each other. It's like, okay, this person says this person. And then what would Kid Win say back to that? Oh, of course he's going to say this. What name would Clock Blocker come up with for that? Windman. Like, how would Victoria react to that? Of course, she would immediately say no. How would Side Piece react to stuff that Damsel's saying? How would Withdrawal react? Well, that's been defined before. And it's just like, you just kind of knock over a domino, and then you just let everyone go the way they've been established, and magic happens.
Yeah. Right. And I mean, a lot of it is just kind of the fun of it. But then a lot of it, I think, is moments that need to happen, like especially the stuff with Damsel, I would say, because like Rain offers to fix Damsel's glitching arm, and Victoria kind of tries to soothe her so that Rain can do it, and then Damsel calls out Victoria for trying to manipulate her, which is true.
Yes.
And then Chris mocks her for being a kid, even though she's making fun of kids, and like it's all just it's fun, and it's kind of delightful, but also this is doing work, because I do feel like we're going somewhere before the end of the story with Damsel.
Yes, I think you're right there. We're paying a lot of specific attention to Damsel, and we're paying a lot of specific attention to Damsel and Chris and their relationship. Like, that was discussed briefly in chapter 1. We bring it back here as they continue to butt heads in interesting ways. And like we've talked about in the past, what Wildbow has done here with 19.z is he's primed us already to pay extra special attention to Chris, right? Like we've seen the Seymour chapter and how it plays out, and so we're like reading into everything he does and says. And so he sits back at the end of the ship and like right by the exit, and like Victoria notes is like, oh, he's right by the back of the ship, he could just grow wings and jump out. And that has weighted meaning to it because of what we learned in the last interlude. And then we have this moment where he participates in this conversation, and I want to kind of stop and talk to you about this a bit, Matt, because I spent some time thinking about this and I think it's really interesting.
Sure, go for it.
Damsel starts mouthing off again in her typical damsel way because she's damsel, and Chris like just immediately jumps in and starts trolling her. And like we said, it's a natural continuation of the ribbing they were doing to each other in chapter 1, but I think it's a little bit more than that. So we have like Damsel's arm is busted. It is not working. It is broken. But she's freaking damsel of distress, and she can't admit that. She can't admit that, and she can't just be like, hey, please fix my arm. I'll be better at stuff if you fix my arm. And like everyone tries to help. Like Rain tries to offer to fix it. Victoria chimes in and tries to manipulate her to help. Like Defiant at the front of the school bus is basically like yelling at the children to pipe down and knock it off and stuff. And nothing's working. And then Chris kind of comes in here and he challenges her and belittles her in similar, very Chris-like ways. And then Damsel gets her arm fixed. And I'm not giving that credit to Chris, because the thing I love here is that after all this like threatening and stuff, Rain just walks up to Damsel and is just like, give me your arm. Like right. After all of this, like he basically calls her on her bullshit. But I don't know, like Chris is a jerk, and he challenges people and pisses people off and pushes people away at every available opportunity. But here, in a crowded space with a bunch of people he doesn't like, I'm putting that in quotes, right. The only person he really trolls, the only person he really pushes back against is Damsel, who's being fucking annoying.
Yeah.
And again, I don't want to give him credit, but part of what he does is trying to get her to a place maybe where she will submit and allow herself to be fixed. And I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's always a kind of method to his assholishness.
Yeah.
Or maybe not always. Maybe
not always. Yeah.
50% of the time. Like a lot of, there's definitely a huge self-destructive streak in Chris as a character, and in like a kind of willful undermining of relationships whenever he starts to feel close to someone, he'll go out of his way to be mean to them, basically, which is why he's so mean to Kinsey, actually. Mm-hmm. But also, like, there's this sort of aspect of him where he's needling people to make them better, or at least that's my read on him. Like he's criticizing them, but in the kind of way where it's like to force them to confront their own issue and then maybe have a chance of getting over it. He's not just being a dick. I mean, sometimes. Yeah,
so I think sometimes, and I think Chris's problem, and I think we could go back to one of the things Yamada said to him at the very beginning of the story is he doesn't know where to draw that line. He doesn't know where to draw the line between like needling in an effort to maybe get someone to see through their bullshit and needling to just be hurtful and nasty. And he has trouble stopping. Like even if he starts with a noble goal in mind, it leads to just becoming hurtful and awful. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, maybe here we're seeing that change a little bit. I feel like when it comes to Chris, I am just consistently being optimistic to a point that I think it's damaging my ability to read the story objectively. But I don't know. I did think, like, I was just thinking of like how bad Chris could be in this contained space with all these people. He could be like really, really, really nasty to a bunch of them.
Yeah.
And he's not.
He's got a lot on his mind at this point, I think. And
true.
Yeah,
true.
I mean, I think the one thing is, like, we all kind of know a few Chris's in our world who, like, it is the lovable asshole trope. He's definitely crossed a few lines in the story, but that doesn't mean he's not still the lovable asshole trope, I guess is how I would phrase it. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
So we get the fun discussion of the neurosurgeon's fingers on Trophy Wife's trophy rack.
Which is just a really great way of reminding us and reinforcing like that this is a group of heroes and villains and good people and awful fucking terrible people.
Yeah.
Which like it's easy to forget when you get like swept up into the story and like these people they're working with are bad in a lot of ways.
Right. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the humor here for me comes with like the major malfunctions being in next to these guys, and they're just like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah. I also like this brings me back to like the strategy that Victoria takes with Damsel when she is trying to manipulate her into getting her arm fixed, where she basically falls back on the old hero villain paradigm, where she basically like, this is how things work. Like we rib each other, we poke at each other, and but when the chips come down, we get together and we keep like ribbing at each other and poking each other, but like we don't like get violent, and it doesn't work on Damsel. But I think it is very interesting that we have Victoria like reintroduce that idea of the truce, the cops and robbers paradigm here. And then remind us of why it's necessary sometimes, as you have a villain who's holding human fingers that she took from. Okay, he was a jerk. He was definitely a jerk, but still, you take some fingers.
It was willing. He gave the fingers willingly, so it's fine.
He gave the first ones willingly, and then he asked to pay back that which was owed, and she took his fingers instead. So, but
yeah,
Matt,
well, you know.
The fingers are helping everyone.
Beggars can't be choosers.
The fingers are helping everyone.
Yeah, it's better this way.
I mean, that is the interesting thing that like when Victoria challenges her on what she did, her idea is like, well, this guy is contributing more to stop the end of the world than the rest of them being non-powered people. Quicker fingers and better hand-eye coordination for me and everyone around me. And who comes to the defense of the normies, Matt? Who? Victoria Dallin?
Yeah.
Defends the humans? She says a good share of them are down in the crystal landscape, preparing to bomb it again. I wouldn't be so sure they're not making an impact. I really like, if we look back on it, the moment where Victoria gives this rousing speech and humanity responds is really, I think, where we kind of saw Victoria come back from the brink of fuck them, like fuck the normies.
Yeah.
And I think that's like, I think when this book is all said and done, we'll look back at that as a big turning point moment for her.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, it's funny because there was so much of this book where she did have that attitude. It was kind of reinforced by characters like Nieves and I mean, I think there have been more than a small number of instances like that. But yeah, I mean, seeing them kind of do their part to fight the battle, she really has come around on it, and now this is her attitude. It's one of the many ways in which she has changed, actually.
Yeah, definitely.
So we start seeing the Seamerg's progress in cooking the inhabitants of the Cauldron HQ to a nice brainwashed shade of red via kind of Defiance sensors, I guess. And Defiance says that his battle simulations do not show a promising outcome for what lies ahead.
Yeah. So I love this moment. I love the moment where she's looking at the simulation and seeing everyone get brainwashed, and she realizes that this isn't a simulation, that this is what's literally happening right now, that she's looking at what's happening at headquarters right now, and she freaks the hell out about it.
Yeah.
And I love the order of people she lists when she realizes these people are in danger and are going to be hypnotized or brainwashed or taken over or made into a Seamerg bomb, whatever you want to call it. She says, Kenzie, the heartbroken, Tattletale, my sister. And of course, it's cleverly divided into two paragraphs, right? Like Kenzie, the heartbroken, Tattletale, all one sentence, paragraph break, my sister, which is, I think, makes it clear to me that like the top are people I care about that are in danger. The bottom is, oh, this could be bad.
Yeah.
if this power is Seamerg bombed, this could be bad. But I really like that. I love that the heartbroken are listed there. Like, and Tattletale makes the cut, you know, like.
Yeah.
like these are people that she cares about. Of course, Kenzie's first. She loves Kenzie, but Tattletale is on that list, and the rest of the Heartbroken are on that list. And yes, they could also literally just referring to how bad it would be if these people are Seamerg bombed. But I really like that. I like how that's structurally done. I like how it draws attention to it. And we see the people she's worried about and the people she's worried about.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think it can be read both ways, and maybe should be read both ways. But I definitely interpreted especially specifically the spacing choice to be like the people I like and the person I don't like.
Yeah.
But both groups are equally scary. Well, not equally, but both groups are very scary to fight. In fact,
they indeed are.
I mean, in terms of disasters, the Heartbroken, if like fully unleashed against humanity, is very bad.
Yeah.
We've sort of never even seen them really go all out, and they're like, they have some pretty bad powers. So one thing, like, just the tiniest crack of light here is Defiant says, my simulations don't really show any good outcomes here. Like I don't like even taking into account stuff like, good things happening for us. I don't see a good outcome. And so you're like, oh, this is horrible. But just a minute ago, Victoria said, oh, so, you had a simulation for me, making the choice to go into the shard world. And he's basically like, no, that was way too far out of left field. There's no way I could have predicted that.
There's not enough data to accurately predict how that's going to
go. Or even the fact that she would have tried it was my interpretation. I mean, maybe you interpret it differently, but it's like, no, that was just a wild ass choice. Like I can only interpret things that sort of make a degree of sense, that like I can program them in as like what a person would do. And that was just such a strange choice and so my thought based on that is like, well, his battle computer predicts a terrible outcome. And so if they're going to have anything other than a terrible outcome, it's going to require another wild ass choice, something very unpredictable and strange that only someone as balls out as Victoria would even attempt.
I like this. And I like how maybe the solution to this whole thing needs to be like, stop fucking listening to all the precog shit. Like it's just I think like, a lot, Worm dealt with that in some ways, but not entirely. Like, I think Worm was very much like, this is what the precog's saying, and we have to act accordingly. And that's what all of our characters like acted based on what precognition showed was going to be the result of something. But like maybe in this, it's like, it's not perfect. It's too limiting. It's like, it shouldn't be the end all be all of the choices that you make in your life. And I don't know.
I like that a lot because it reminds me of like the idea that I think maybe one of my favorite sequences in the whole of Parahumans is Golem doing the red or blue, and Dinah saying red or blue, and he's basically sort of being guided through this impossible task by her precognition, and it's totally awesome, and they catch Jack. And then it doesn't fucking matter at all because Jack still manages to talk to Scion and blows everything up. So ultimately it was ineffectual. And it's like, well, what were you supposed to do? Well, I don't know. But that didn't work.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah. I like that. I like that. I mean, I don't know if that's going to be the answer, but I like that kind of framing. So
sure.
We get some initial hints at around this point that Victoria's plan is something that nobody likes.
Yeah.
Or I guess maybe reminders. So here's something that I think I missed out on last arc, because last arc people were expressing objections, and I thought that they were objections to using Amy for the plan because they thought that she was untrustworthy. But now I'm kind of reflecting on that, and I'm like, oh, maybe they were expressing hesitation at the plan itself, not just using Amy for the plan.
Yeah, see, my understanding was that they were expressing rejection and hesitation towards the idea of judo being the plan. The idea that of letting the bad guys win and then hoping we can grasp victory from the jaws of defeat. I will admit that I'm still not like 100% clear on like, so Victoria has this plan that we're going to learn later is genocide, quote unquote, in some way. And this plan has been communicated out, so everyone knows this is the route she's going, but we, the reader, haven't been privy to that knowledge until the very end of this chapter. I'm still a little unclear on that, I guess.
Well, I think we're meant to be, because she just like it's a very vague answer when she says, "What's the plan?" and she says genocide, and it's like Bonesaw knows enough about the situation to, I think, read between the lines and be like, okay, I see what I have all of this domain knowledge. I get it. I get your idea, but we don't really like I've heard different ideas about like, okay, does she mean we're going to kill all the capes, or we're going to effectively eradicate sort of this species of parahuman by negating their powers, and then it'll have been effective genocide, although no one's been killed.
Yeah, no, and I'm totally fine with the uncertainty of what genocide means in this case. Like I think absolutely we are not supposed to have a firm grasp on what exactly Victoria means there. The confusion I'm having is who knows what, as far as what Victoria was planning. Because I don't know, like this is back to me being a quibbly jerk sometimes, but like it feels weird to me that this was Victoria's plan like the entire time, and it just wasn't, nobody talked about it until this very moment. You know what I mean?
It seems, like, yeah, and yeah, I mean, you forced me to remember that the way Chris kind of hangs back makes me think maybe he didn't know.
Yeah, well, like when Chris gives her a very specific look when she says the word genocide. And we are jumping ahead big time here, but I think this is important. But like that made me believe this is the first he's hearing of it.
Right.
But maybe not. Maybe it's just like she's saying it, and the reality of the plan is coming to fruition in her mind, and it is like saying it out loud in this kind of context is a lot different than playing it as a hypothetical when you're talking to the person that could make it happen.
Well,
like, and here's, maybe she just never got as far with Amy, like to outline what the plan is to her. Like, in theory, this is what she was thinking the whole time. And she was going to tell, like, as soon as Amy agreed to help, she was going to be like, all right, so here's my plan, genocide.
Right.
And I guess that's just where I'm confused.
I'm not any more sure than you are. I think that I guess none of that bothered me though. Like it was more like I feel pretty sure that Chris didn't know until this conversation, but I don't know if that's just because he wasn't like in the room when she was talking about it or what.
Yeah, I mean,
exactly.
He's not on the team, so that would make fine sense for me.
I think we'll probably get this cleared up though.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think it's just my problem with it is that I took it to mean a certain thing and then just warped everything around that meaning and stopped paying attention to what any other meaning could be. Like every time someone expressed like to Victoria that her idea is bad.
Yeah.
Like I think Defiance says at the end of this thing is like, God, I hope we don't have to use your idea.
Right.
Like my interpretation of that statement was just like, oh, you mean letting the bad guy win first? Like, yeah, that is something that I think most people would be like, yeah, that sounds like a fucking like if that's our key to win, that sounds real bad. And I didn't quite grok the idea that, oh no, these people the whole time were talking about this plan that we don't learn about till the very end of this section.
It's still possible that you're right. It's still possible that is what they're reacting to. And the genocide plan is like phase 3, which he hasn't actually told anyone else.
Yeah.
I mean, she's also said stuff offhand, like the wardens had their plan. Yeah. We don't know what that is either.
No, we don't. Yeah.
So I think this is just, there are certain things that are being kept from us intentionally, and we just kind of need to continue to exist in the state of being like, well, we'll find out eventually.
Yeah, I mean, this whole thing makes me think like what the process of like reading the final chapter of Ward or Worm would have been like if I was reading it piecemeal and having to talk between it. Like I'm sure there's moments in that where I would be like, I am so fucking confused. What the hell's going on? But when you get to read it in one big chunk and talk about it in one big chunk like we did, obviously this becomes very clear. Like what would our conclusion have been to the first time Taylor starts like not speaking English if we didn't have the payoff to that readily at hand, you know?
Right. I mean, even when I was reading it, I think I was like texting my brother, like, a lot of typos in this chapter.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of the unique fun parts about reading a book serially like this is at this level it could just be like, I am so fucking confused. What, who, where, when, why? And then like 2 days later a chapter comes out and you're like, oh. And that confusion was part of it the whole time.
I guess we don't talk about this very much, but this is definitely something that Wildbow and all authors do, where they kind of maintain intentional uncertainty so that you'll have a few different ideas about what something could be, and then it all eventually collapses down to one at some point when they want it to. So.
Okay, yeah, that's enough tangent talking about that.
Sounds good.
Let's move on.
So I love this short conversation between Byron and the two Flock Brockton Bay wards about whether death constitutes failure. I think it's very foreboding and great. And the fact that it's kind of truncated without really having a resolution leaves us with this slight feeling of like a parenthesis that's been opened.
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, it's really powerful because Byron is thinking about his brother and doesn't want to look at his brother's death as a failure, right? Like Wildbow, I think, uses Sveta to smartly remind us of this fact where she's like, hey guys, he just lost his brother. And then like, I think that allows us to tune into what may be going through Byron's head at this point. And I think that is a question that I've been personally wrestling with since we lost Tristan. Like, what do I feel about the final movement of his character? This character that I really loved. Did Tristan fail? Was his death a failure? And I mean, certainly like losing yourself and going Titan could be seen as a failure. He failed to accept the things that he did, and he failed to accept the way that made people feel about him. And that is what triggered potentially this change in him. But in his final moments, he took his own life to give Byron his. And that's tragic and awful. And I don't want to glamorize that in any kind of way. But I don't know if I would call it failure, right? Like, I think in his final moments, he did something that I don't know if earlier in the story Tristan would have been able to do. And I get why Byron wants to look back at this and say, no, that wasn't failure. That was not a failure.
It's so complicated, right? I mean, it's like you can look at it a certain way and you can say that he succumbed to his demons. And I don't know if one can really argue against that and say, no, that's not what happened. It's like, no, that's kind of what happened.
It is. Yeah, it definitely is.
And so the question is that failure? And I'm like, I don't think that's the right word to use in that situation. Like it's on, I mean, I don't like, maybe this metaphor is not appropriate or whatever, but like, I feel like it's like saying that you lost your battle with cancer. It's like you failed to defeat cancer. Yeah. It's like that's not the right word to use for that. Like it's a biological process. It's something that it's just the wrong framing for it, and it's understandable that a lot of people want to use that framing, right? Like it's sort of a natural feeling framing in some ways, but also I think the fact that it's a natural feeling framing doesn't mean it's a healthy framing. I think it's an unhealthy framing that feels natural.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I mean, I think it's an unhealthy framing in Tristan's case. It's an unhealthy framing for both Kid Win and Clockblocker to look back on, and that we failed Vista because we died. It's like, well, you didn't control that. Right. Like, you don't get to decide when you live or die. That is out of your hands. And I like this idea generally because, like, I think you're right. I think, like, when we're looking at recovery, when we're looking at the struggle to recover from the terrible things that have happened to us, the idea of saying I failed to recover feels so wrong to me, right? Like, everyone's struggling with this stuff. Everyone goes through it and succeeds or I don't want to say succeeds because the opposite of that is failure, but everyone makes steps in different at different speeds, using different strategies, doing different things. And the idea that we chalk this up, if a person gets to a point where they cannot get past something, to just be like, well, you failed to get past that. You're right. That just feels so wrong. And I mean, I think that's, I understand, like, I get Byron's wanting to reject that out of hand. I really do.
Yeah. I mean, and the idea, like I said, I wonder if this is going to be one of those things that becomes a motif of this arc, because the conversation is ended before it can really resolve. And so it's like,
Right.
okay, are we starting this conversation, and we're going to continue this conversation about the idea of is backsliding or succumbing to your demons failure. And I think I mean, I like the conversation that you and I just had, and I can't wait to see whether the book continues to explore that.
Yeah, and I do think that is going to be one of the final questions that the book is going to answer, or at least outline an answer on. I think one of the things I like about these books is they never give like a firm, definite, like, this is the answer to that question. It's like, here are some potential answers to that question.
Right. Here's some scenarios for you to think about. Yeah.
Yeah.
But just, I love this description of the cauldron facility as a white tombstone the size of a mountain.
Oh God, that's so good. It's so good.
As we're flying to this, scene of imminent death and past death, actually.
And Sveta looks at it and is just like, I hate this place.
Yeah, it's great. So they land. Narwhal gives them this very brief sit rep and tells them to dive in. But Victoria doesn't dive in. She's held back by the call from Riley, which she has said that she would field. Mm-hmm. So we recap the bit of conversation which we saw in the Simurgh's future sight, again verifying that this is the future that she saw without any deviation or anything. And I just for the, like, as a writing trick, I think it's made extra clear that this is indeed the same conversation, because Sarah uses this very memorable the benefits of being dubious phrase, which is such a very clever turn of phrase that definitely stuck in our mind the first time through. And so when we hear it said again, we're like, okay, yeah, this is that conversation. We don't have to wonder about that. Yeah,
I mean, this is, to me, Matt, my favorite part of this week's chapters. Like, how this plays out is just so wonderful. We've already talked about how Wild Rose primed us to pay extra special attention to Chris during this entire thing. And then there's several individual moments during this that, like, ramp up to the call where you're just, like, screaming at Chris to just, like, go away. Like, the team walks off, and Byron asks Chris if he's coming. And Chris is like, I'll catch up later. And you're just like, no, no, go with him. Byron, tell him you need his help or something. Yeah. And then there's this moment where, like, Victoria sees Chris, like, react to an auditory stimulus, and he's like, oh, he's listening in on the call. And you're like, no, tell him not to listen in. Tell him this is private. Tell him no. And then, so you're, like, primed for this. And then we're listening in on the conversation, and we see the two phrases that the Simurgh pointed out towards us. We see her say, the flock is disturbed, and we see Bonesaw say, I kind of don't mind being on my own. And to me, it was just like this moment, like, of just utter defeat. Like, and I think, like, this is one of those moments in which, like, the subversion here is that it wasn't subverted, that, like, things just play out exactly the way they were supposed to. Mm-hmm. And, like, I was really, like, when I said last week, when I said I'm going to be paying extra special attention to this phrase, I kind of don't mind being on my own. And I said, if it's told the exact same way, that means something. But if it's told differently, that means something too. And when I said that, in the back of my mind, I was like, well, it's definitely not going to be the exact same phrase. Like, it's definitely going to be a slightly different phrase, or said in a slightly different order, or under a different context, or something like that. And it's not. Mm-hmm. It's not. It is just exactly what the Simurgh said. It plays out exactly the way she saw everything play out. And, like, it's so heartbreaking and defeating in a lot of different ways. And I let myself feel that. And then I let myself kind of come to a place in which it makes sense for me and everything's going to be okay. Because, of course, everything's going to play out exactly how it was supposed to. That's how precognition works in a certain sense. Mm-hmm. But I think, like, the choice that Chris is going to have to make here, and I do think at the end of the day, we could talk about free will versus determinism all day, but I think the character is going to be given an option and is going to make it a choice. And I think, as we talked about at the very beginning of the show, I think the choice that Chris makes is going to come down to Victoria. It's going to come down to the way Victoria looks at Chris as a person. The things that he's done, the things that he's done to other people, the things that he's done to her, the things that he's said, and the ways that he's acted, and every little moment from the first time she went to check on him at the orphanage to right now is going to play into the interaction between these two characters, and what each of them chooses to do is going to the fate of the world hinges on it. And that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be something along those lines. What form it takes, I'm excited to see. I definitely, I mean, one way or another, it's going to be some big thing with these two people for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, we catch up to what we were talking about earlier, where Victoria tells us what her plan is. It's genocide of, I mean, I guess parahumans. I mean, we can't be sure what it means.
She says us.
Us, yeah.
Us.
And, you know, I've thought for some time that the end of the story might involve powers being removed from the world. And I suppose there's a chance that killing all parahumans would do something that impacts the shards. I don't know. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, what I think is that I doubt the conclusion of the story is going to be Victoria just saying like, well, we all gotta die. Mm-hmm. I do. Let's just think about this for a minute, though, because I think if we look at what the arc kind of started with, we see that chapter 1 was this 3-beat of Victoria reminiscing about being a cape and about what she thought being a cape was and what being a cape ended up being. And to that young girl, to that young Victoria, being a cape was the most important thing in the world. It was everything. And that desire continued even after she got powers. Like, and it's this wonderful, like, it's wonderful contradiction in her that we talked about a few weeks ago about this idea that she hates her powers, but she loves her powers. Like, yeah. It is this idea that, like, she loves being a cape. Being a cape is the most important thing. Powers are the most important thing, the coolest thing. I love these things, and I hate them. I hate them because they connect me to some of the worst moments of my life. I hate them because of what they did to me. And she got to a point where she accepted them. She accepted the good parts, focused on those good parts, and allowed the bad parts to just be where they belong. And I don't know, like, I think that we see in chapter 1, she's kind of admitting to herself that, like, this discongruity between what being a cape was in her mind and what being a cape is. And I don't know, like, this idea of I don't want this anymore would be a very interesting one to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, you know, in the same bucket of all of these feelings about being a cape is this idea where she's like, I don't expect to live long. You know, I expect to die before I'm 30 and all the, I don't know if she's had that exact thought, but she thinks very similar things where, like, yeah, we all die in combat. We don't live long. It's actually very similar to Damsel's attitude, although she uses different language for it, where it's like, yeah, it's a violent world and it's terrible. And it's like, yeah, that's awful. And like, maybe that has something to do with why you keep throwing yourself into these suicidal situations, is you don't think that you can possibly survive. So the idea of
you don't value your life.
Yeah. Getting some kind of end where she gets to tap out and be like, okay, I retire, you know, because they say parahumans can't retire, but like, what if they could?
Right.
Or what if they had to?
I mean, and genocide is such a specific, powerful word to pull here, right? Like, that word has a lot of connotation, a lot of meaning behind it. And I wonder, like, it could be one of those things where, like, Victoria tends to be a dramatic person, and she knows that word is going to stir a lot of drama, and Riley is going to react to it in a certain way. But I mean, you start thinking about, like, okay, well, what does that mean? Like, what does it mean to genocide us being those with powers? And I mean, it could just be as simple as capes. The concept of capes no longer exist as we know them today. And that could be what we've been talking about with, like, that we find a way to separate shard from human through some wackiness, and then so capes don't exist anymore. It could be a symbiosis, the likes of which Victoria has achieved. And therefore the line blurs to where us is not a thing anymore. I don't know, but I do know that, like, kill them all is just not. I don't see that as being the end point here.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it's going to be some creative thing that I haven't necessarily thought of, because I mean, it's something that you need a biotinker to do, because that's kind of the one rule. It needed to be Amy or Bonesaw, and apparently Bonesaw and Chris can do it in conjunction. So
yeah,
something with wetware and maybe brains or something.
Yeah, it's going to be bloody. It's going to be messy. Nobody likes it.
Right. I think in this story we've had so many beats of like nursery and egg and like all these gross body horror things. Like I do wonder if there's going to be an element of the body horror to whatever this ends up being. Like and remember the element of like it seemed like in the previous worlds people are the alien species that were fighting the entities would like merge themselves together into a big pile.
Yeah.
So that's on the table, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think thematically, the acceptance and arrangement that Victoria has reached with the Fragile One, it would make sense for that to be a part of it, right? Mm-hmm. Like this unique relationship Victoria has with her shard either helps precipitate the actual act or is what allowed her to get the idea. Makes sense. Like from a narrative perspective. Mm-hmm. So I kind of want to make the, not prediction, but the assumption that it goes through that in some way. Where it goes, I mean, I don't know. I think, when we just look at it from a 500-foot level, like the word genocide is used here to make us have these conversations, right? Yeah, to make us think about this in this specific way. It is such a loaded word that it spurs a lot of conflicting feelings like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think so. But Riley is very reluctant for personal reasons. She doesn't want to be that person anymore.
Yeah.
And she also can't make it there in time. But then Chris says he can do it. And then as he's like transformed into a rat, physically regressing into his lab rat state, mm-hmm. He says, yeah, let me do the genocide thing.
Yeah. So this is in my moments of desperation where I was like, this means that things are going differently, right? Don't they? And I went back to 19.z to try to get verification. And there is this line that the Seamerg has where it says, he would think he was not a part of society. He offered no helping hands and he needed none. And then I was like, well, look here. He just offered to help. That means that things are different. Unfortunately, Matt, that line I just read to you comes after a line that says these events would precipitate a thought minutes after the conversation with Riley Grace Davis. So basically the order of events here is they get off the phone and then a couple minutes later, Chris has a thought, and that thought is a combination of everything that Seamerg has set up, and it sends him down this path of, I don't need anybody. I'm getting out of here. Mm-hmm. So the idea that he says, I'll do it here does not directly contradict anything the Seamerg has predicted. Unfortunately, I wish it did. It doesn't. It is not until after he has the thought, the minutes following this conversation, that he fully embraces this idea of, I don't need to be a part of society. I don't need to help anyone, and I don't need any help myself. So I wish I could say that, yes, obviously here he says I'm going to help. So therefore, you're wrong. Yeah. Seamerg, no. Unfortunately, no.
In fact, I bet we see this moment in the next chapter, which has probably already been released. But anyway, I bet we see the moment where it precipitates this thought, and we see his reaction to this.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be really interesting because my immediate question to that is, okay, how does Wildbow show that through Victoria?
Yeah.
Right? And I mean, I have to guess. I think the thought is going to happen. Like, I think it is going to happen. Something is going to pop into Chris's head. We are going to see a change in behavior in Chris that happens early in the next chapter, and then that is going to lead to an argument or something between Victoria and Chris, and that's going to be huge.
I think so. Yeah, I think we'll know when we see it. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
All right, Scott. That was the chapters.
That was it.
Let's do our discussion question. So the discussion question from last week was, who are your favorite siblings in Parahumans? Daedalus Fallen lists some honorable mentions, but goes with Amy and Victoria. And they say, who could have guessed, right? So original to choose the protagonist and her sister, I know. But their relationship has so many things in it that I can't even fathom how hard it must be to write such a long-running, successful, in a literary sense, relationship between two fictional people. In the beginning of Worm, they were the dynamic duo of heroes composed of the popular girl and her shy adopted sister. Combine that with Amy's trials and tribulations, and you get a compelling character that bounces off one another perfectly. Then Victoria gets mind whammied. Their relationship changes in a heartbeat, and suddenly their story just got a hell of a lot darker. We hear about Amy's past some more, with their sisterhood being a critical connection that gets explored beautifully and tragically. I think it would be a little redundant to go on and on about what their relationship looks like in Ward, but there's no questioning that the duo have had more high-quality, plot-relevant relationship drama than any other siblings in the Parahumans universe. Yeah, that's for sure.
Definitely true. Definitely true. And I was like, I when you posed this question, Matt, these were the two I thought about. And despite the fact that like this is a disgusting, like awful, awful relationship, I do find in a narrative sense, it's really interesting and fascinating. And these are two extremely complex characters. And I as frustrated as I was and disgusted I was with Amy so many times throughout the story, I always liked reading those parts.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's good storytelling. It makes you feel things.
Yep. All right. Next we have Scavenger 5882 and Das Niveau, who both picked Nyx and Nyx. The twin cauldron capes where one became a case 53 and the other didn't. I think Scavenger said this is not their favorite, but they just, and both of them expressed interest in just, I want to know more about these people. Like one of them joins the Vegas Wards and the other ends up as on the Slaughterhouse 9. And those are two people that like started at the same time and took way different paths. And they both want to learn more about them. And I do too.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Yeah, I agree. I always kind of felt that way. It seemed like there was a fun backstory there. Like why did they choose to take the vial in the first place? You know, or did they? You know, those kind of things.
Yeah.
Sarah Penguin says, when a dangerous supervillain declared herself a warlord and almost carved a guy up in front of a crowd, Sierra cared about her brother enough to approach that villain. This love for her brother leads her down a path that becomes the front for villains and being the legal owner of a dimensional portal. And at the end of the day, what is the point of family without being the owner of a dimensional portal? Exactly.
That's a good answer. I forgot about them, but yeah.
Yeah, me
Sierra,
too.
I love Sierra.
Sierra's brother is not anyone that we know, right?
No, I don't think so.
I mean, I think we met them, but they're not like still in the story. I don't think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So next we have Jubidoo, who answers the question with Victoria and Sveta. I know they're not technically sisters, but both Crystal and Mark have said that they consider Sveta part of the family. If it's good enough for them, it's good enough for me. Sibling relationships in the Parahumans universe are rough. Heartbringer's kids, Aisha and Brian, Capricorn, even when they're relatively good, the emphasis has to be on relatively. This is to be expected. The kind of people the Shards would be interested in are generally going to have a shitty home life, but it's still going to be a challenge to pick a favorite when the options aren't that pretty to begin with. This is why I chose Victoria and Sveta. They love and support each other even when they screw up with each other. It's because they were trying to do their best for one another. They celebrate each other's successes and support each other through their failures. Some of us are lucky enough to be born into healthy, supportive families. For others, the best family is sometimes the family that you choose. I like it.
Yeah. I love those kids. Mm-hmm. I like the idea of found family being a big theme in this story too.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of people were asking us or say things like that. I know they're not technically siblings. Here's the thing about these discussion questions. We're not grading them. You interpret that question any way you want.
Yeah. I mean, you did lose a full letter grade for them not being technically siblings, but then you earned some points back. So, you know. And speaking of which, Master Wilhelm says Ashley and Kinsey. So that's another full letter grade off right off the bat. Let's see if they earn it back. They say, yes, they're not sisters, but their relationship is undeniably sibling-esque. I love how Ashley and Kinsey as someone. Sorry, I'm just messing this up. This is my fault. I love how Ashley saw Kinsey as someone to take under her mangled wing due to her similar trauma. I love how Kinsey brings out Ashley's heart and slowly tears down her facade. I just love their whole relationship. Because it was sold so well, and the aftermath of Ashley's death for Kinsey makes the emotional impact that much more crushing and sad. All right, I'll give you your points back.
Yeah, A+.
Yeah, I love taking her under her mangled wing. That was clever.
Mwah. Well done. So we have Penitent Edgelord, great name, who selected Capricorn and wrote a fantastic lengthy post about the twins, especially relating to Tristan and his arc as a person. Penitent Edgelord was nice enough to give us a TLDR on this very long post, which I'm going to change to TLCR for couldn't read. Not because I didn't read it, because I did, and you should too, but we can't read it all aloud on this podcast because it's very long, but it's very good.
Cool.
So here's Penitent Edgelord's TLDR. I found their contrasting personalities along with the conflict over their shared body super interesting. I really appreciate that Tristan was a well-realized gay character, and I related to Byron's introversion and consequent frustration. Their arc has fascinating symmetry to it, though I'm still not sure how I feel about Tristan's death.
Like it. I feel sad about Tristan's death. But yeah, I mean...
I feel very sad.
I thought their arc, their interlude arc was... Well, I mean, I have a lot of favorite parts, but that was definitely one of my favorite parts.
Yeah, I mean, I love both of them. I relate to Tristan in a lot of ways, and I don't know, I loved him. So
yeah,
great answer.
I think that was the great part is there's things to relate to in both of them, and that made it so that the schism between them felt so personal and easy to relate to. Agreed. Nightingard says not technically siblings, but the number boys. Sure, let's call them siblings. And their division along the pro-anti-Sveta lines was super interesting to me. The idea that 5 apparently perfect logicians could arrive at a different answer, that they are not just one deterministic machine, that they can be more and vary, all because of the connections they did, or rather just number 5, made or did not make. At a basic level, this works as a simple nature versus nurture lesson and continues to add to the theme of connections integral to the story, but also pulls in the idea of personal blind spots. Having people look out for you helps you see your own weaknesses, as shown with Kinsey. It also helps number 5 to act on alternate paths rather than just a logical one, all because of Sveta's connection with him. I don't think it will be explored in more depth as more important threads need to be tied up, and with the story wrapping up soon, a sudden fight between Harbingers would really subtract from the focus on, as you said, putting aside old grudges, but a nod to the boys getting back together might be in order. And that'd be fun.
Yeah, I would like that.
And I do love these. I mean, it's funny how they do act like brothers. Like there's kind of a like a cooperation and also something like a rivalry between them. More on the cooperation side, I would say. But yeah, I love the number kids, number lads.
Me too. Especially Jeff.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
All right, next up we have Wanson, who says, Sveta and Nayet, they're both such great people. Nayet, such a fun person and a fucking hero besides, risking her life to save Proto-Sveta when she fell down the cliffs. It's a fucking tragedy she died from her vial. I just hope Sveta will eventually find the village she and her sister came from to tell her parents what became of them.
Aw, yeah, I love that. I mean, the reveal that Nayet was actually this, great person who died very tragically was kind of almost a minor beat in the story, but very sad in retrospect, right?
Yeah.
Like it's easy to blow past and not realize like, oh, that's awful. Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
All right. Sanity Planet says their favorite parahuman siblings are Damsel and Swansong. Excellent. Their interactions very realistically portray how infuriating it is to see your own flaws and weaknesses reflected in your sibling. That feeling comes from both a position of caring, in that you want your sibling to not make the same mistakes you've made, and also a position of selfish insecurity, where you hate the visible reminder of your own shortcomings, and feel embarrassed that others might see the same problems in you that you see in your sibling. Damsel and Swansong also use their intimate knowledge of each other in very various interesting ways. They each use their shared past to try to antagonize, manipulate, and inspire the other. Despite their best efforts to become different people, they nevertheless begin to merge into one after Swansong's persona begins to bleed through into Damsel's after her sacrifice. Damn.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, that's totally a sibling thing. I mean, it's a very concise and painful way of framing the way siblings can be toward each other.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm in this picture and I don't like it, but I don't actually think I'm as bad as Damsel. So
God, certainly not, Matt. Jeez. You stop being so hard on yourself. All right. Next up, we have Flower Priest, who lists Roman and Juliet. They are my favorite example of one of Wildbow's recurring themes, that opposites have more in common than in the middle. We see that in Capricorn, in the Dallins, and to go to another universe, in Blake and Rose, Peter and Paige, Andy and Eva. I only understood some of those people. Siblings with opposite personalities are a common trope in basically all media, but its origin is often unexplored. You only really want to differentiate yourself from someone if you both actually started as very similar people. I don't like to imagine the sort of sick game heartbreaker intended by naming them after lovers, but whatever it was, they did everything in their power to run from that. Roman changed his name and used his righteous anger to protect their younger siblings, while Juliet kept her name and distanced herself from everyone and everything with her deadpan affect. No wonder they wanted the other dead. Their whole lives are defined by being unlike the other instead of being themselves. Even in that, they must be different, with J risking the team to kill him and R risking himself to save her. Shakespeare couldn't dream of such a pair.
Yeah. So complex, right? For this kind of like background pair that we've never really focused on much. Like we have a few beats sprinkled throughout the story, and it's just fascinating. I wonder if we're going to see a resolution to this, or if it's just that's just some fucked up background stuff. Yeah,
the funny thing is, like, I think always in the back of my head, I think I acknowledge the fact that it meant something really gross that Heartbreaker named two siblings after two lovers. Some of the most famous lovers in literature. But I don't think I ever allowed myself to process that until I read Flower Priest's answer here, when I was just like, oh, fuck.
Yeah, I think I processed that enough to be like, I don't want to think about that.
I really think I'm certain that occurred in my head at one point in my time with the story, and I just carved it out of there, and it's back now. Thanks, Flower Priest. Very good answer, though.
Yeah. Dianthus amarensis, which I think might be a flower. They apparently just caught up for the first time this week, so welcome. And they talk about Brian and Aisha, and this is another great comment. It's a lengthy comment. I mean, and there's really a lot to talk about with respect to the Brian Aisha relationship, because it's covers this entire story, right?
Yeah,
I mean, we're introduced. I'm starting to paraphrase the comment here. We're introduced to 13-year-old Aisha who dresses much older and acts really annoying and provocative. And, we don't even find out that she has affection and love for Brian until arc 14, when he comes back from his horrible trauma. And she's not immediately likable, but eventually she kind of grows on us. And it all kind of loops back around later to the lesson that Brian learns, that he's able to tell Kenzie in his interlude. Like it's really cool that way. It says in the wake of Brian's death, Aisha becomes much more like Brian, basically. If his powers were born of a desire to protect his younger siblings, her power is almost tuned to be able to raise a large gaggle of children. Which is a really cool idea. They say apparently they also have a sick ass combo move in Cody's interlude. It's a blink and you'll miss it, but 30 people are able to hide in the darkness and get the drop on the Yangban, because Brian is able to duplicate the memory block to everyone in the darkness. That's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool trick.
It's really cool.
Oh yeah, I like this idea. In Brian's interlude, we see him constantly having flashbacks to Bonesaw telling him she'll carve a skull into his face so he'll look like his helmet. And then from arc 15 onward, he wears a demon mask instead of the skull mask. And now he has a skull on his face. So that's sad.
That's awful.
Yeah, that
Thank
didn't
you
occur
for
to
pointing
me.
that out. That didn't occur to me either.
I enjoyed not having thought of that.
Yeah. Okay. Last but certainly not least, we have Sanity Planet, who lists Damsel and Swan Song. Actually, I think we've read this one already.
Oh, have we?
Wait, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Sure.
So this one is PM'd to me separately. That's why I copied it. Yeah, but
we
read that. That's just some clerical error.
Oops.
Yeah, but thanks for your comments, everybody. Those were great. I love sibling stuff. It's my Achilles heel.
Yeah, I really, really love it. So what's next week's question, Matt?
It is, what character resolution are you most excited to see? What ending do you think would fit for them?
Yeah. So a character that has not reached their resolution, even if like it could even be like I don't actually think that character is going to get this resolution, but I would really want to see it anyway. You can even answer it that way.
Sounds good.
All right. So that is it for the discussion question. It's time to get a little mad. We got March Madness. So there are 32 matchups this week, and as we move further into the tournament, we might take the time to vote in every single one of them live on the podcast here. We are not going to do that today. We are 2 hours and 10 minutes into this show, and I don't want to go on for another half an hour as you and I click radio buttons and talk about them.
Yeah.
I do want to jump to some of the more interesting matchups here, though.
Okay.
So I'm going to list some. Do you have the website open for here? Okay. So let's just go down and let's look at each of our 4 brackets and let's pick some of the most interesting matchups we have here. I should say that Rain is our number 1 seed overall, by the way. He's our number 1 seed, and he's going right through Mama Mathers in the first round, our number 16 seed in that bracket. I think that's a really easy choice there, Matt.
Okay.
I think that's a very hard one.
All right.
Right? You're going to vote for Rain, right, Matt?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So let's look at some other fun ones in this. I think one of the ones that I didn't expect to be that fun, but is going to be fun, is our 8th matchup in the thing. It's Ratcatcher versus Love Lost. Ratcatcher is our 8 seed. Love Lost is our 9 seed. So this is a very close matchup. And I really honestly don't know who it's going to go to. Who do you think?
I think these are the most exciting ones, the ones where it's like not super primary characters who people have a lot of complicated feelings for. I mean, Love Lost is a much bigger part of the story, but Ratcatcher is a very unique and interesting character. I think Ratcatcher has meme power.
Meme power is important.
I think Ratcatcher might win that one.
Who are you voting for, though?
I honestly like Love Lost as a creation. Ratcatcher is great, but she's minor. Love Lost is this fantastic story of this woman who lost her daughter and then was able to kind of surmount that grief and save the life of the boy who took her daughter from her in an act of heroism. So
yeah.
I think that's a great story.
I agree. I am voting for Love Lost. Ratcatcher is adorable. Love her. Love Lost is one of my favorite characters in the story, so not a hard decision for me at all. Let's look at one more in this bracket. Let's look at Cause and Effect, the Seamerg versus Dauntless, who is still around, by the way. We haven't talked about our best dad in a while, but he still exists in the story.
I mean, I think I'm going to vote for Dauntless just because his interlude totally gutted me, so... That's kind of easy. I just love the shit out of that interlude.
Yeah, we're both agreeing on this stuff. I'm gonna vote for Dauntless as well. I haven't yet planned a path in my head on how he becomes part of the end, but it just feels like it has to happen. Like Chekhov's best dad, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, he has served a role, but it hasn't been very central. So I do wonder if it will come into play at some point.
He kind of kicked off and gave a glimpse of things to come. So he has definitely served a role in that regard. But I don't know. It feels like this whole Fume Hood Dauntless thing needs to pay off in a way that we haven't seen yet.
I think so.
All right. So lots of other fun matchups in our Aleph bracket, but let's move on. Let's move on to the bet bracket. Do you want to pick one that looks really juicy to you here?
Let me see. I'm going to scroll down to the closer seeds.
Yeah.
Crystal versus Harbinger 5, Jeff the Nice Number Boy. That sounds fun because I have such affection for Jeff. Chris is also a great character. I mean, I think this is exactly what makes a good matchup. Is they're great characters in very different ways. I don't know. I'm going to have to think about this one. I don't have a good answer.
I don't have to think about it. I love Crystal. I'm voting for Crystal. Jeff, you're great. You're great. You're so nice. You're such a nice boy, Jeff. But you're not Crystal, and so you lose. I'm sorry.
I think I'm literally not going to vote right now. I'm going to think about this for a while.
Yeah, that's breaking the rules, but whatever.
Okay, I'm going to vote for... No, I'm not going to vote right now. Don't rush me.
The other one in this bracket I really like is our 7 and 10. We have Sean Gilpatrick versus Camille Armstrong. It's our normie matchup. This is a tough one, but I'm voting for Gilpatrick. Done. He's my boy.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with Gilpatrick too. I mean, they're both great, and they're both so great. Why are you doing this to me?
Look, it's fun, they tell me.
Oh, I mean, it is. Yeah, that's true. I forgot about that part.
All right, so I think Lisa is our number 1 seed in this bracket, and she's going up against Cradle in the first round. I think that's going to be a pretty easy victory for Tattletale there.
Everyone be sure that you read the names of the matchups because Scott
I had some fun.
Scott has had a lot of fun, and he's given us so much enjoyment in this way. It's great.
I'm glad you're enjoying it. What do you think about Finale versus Citrine? I mean, Finale's the right move there.
I think Finale's gonna win that one, yeah. Just because, I mean, Citrine is a great like character, but not. I would say not lovable is what I would say.
Sure,
yeah,
fair. Lovable goes a long way.
Yeah,
in this matchup.
It
All right,
does.
Let's move on to Gimel. Gimel is where our protagonist appears. Our number 1 seed in the Gimel bracket is Victoria Dallin up against none other than just the best intern I've ever seen.
Yes.
It's one Eric, no last name.
Yes, I voted for Victoria while you were talking because I just wanted to get that over with.
Yeah. I did too. Look, I think it's funny that Eric is in this. I thought everyone would get a kick out of it, but come on, nobody's gonna vote for that guy.
And let us never speak of it again.
All right, let's look at some other fun matchups in this one. I think you're right that, especially in this first round, the close ones are going to be more fun. I think we have Moose versus Moonsong, the Moo matchup. Who do you vote for in Moo Moo?
Oh man. I mean, I liked Moonsong's whole arc in the story quite a lot, and I mean, Moose also kind of had his own arc, but it was much sadder. And I like feeling happy things rather than sad things.
That's good
so
logic.
I'm going to vote for Brianna.
That's good logic. I voted for Moonsong. I did not expect to because Moonsong was such a jerk, but I really liked the journey Moonsong went on. And yeah, I liked Moose as well. But there's so much more there's so much more there with Moonsong. It's such a meteor character. And I really enjoyed her. So.
Yeah, I agree.
Do you think that Fume Hood is going to beat best girl and fashion icon Natalie Madison?
Yes.
You do? You think Natalie's going to lose this round?
I think
5 seed Natalie is going to lose this round.
I think Fume Hood. See, that's the thing is, I think different people have different metrics, and I can't necessarily predict other people's metrics. But like, if somebody had a really great interlude that just, I guess they both had great interludes. Shit.
Yeah, Matt.
Damn.
What now?
That's why it's a good matchup. Is like they both had good interludes. They both like struggle, and then they overcome sort of. Oh man, killing me, man. I don't know. I still think Fume Hood's gonna win that one. We'll see.
All right, I'm gonna vote for the one with the tattoo on her butthole, Natalie.
I mean, she hasn't mentioned it, but we don't know.
Come on. It's there.
Okay.
All right, let's move on to our final bracket. Let's move on to Shin. Okay. Shin is where Swansong makes an appearance as our number 1 seed, and she's up against Shortcut. Again, I think we're not going to have any 16 seed upsets this year on March's Madness. I think we're pretty safe in that regard.
Yeah, no, I don't. I mean, if I feel like the number of people who vote for Shortcut here, we'll just consider that percentage to be like the margin of error for this contest.
Sure.
And then and we'll just round that off.
Fair.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
So Fragile One makes an appearance in this bracket up against Lady Photon, Sarah Pelham 2.0.
Okay.
Pretty easy victory for our wasty friend, right?
Yeah, I think so. She's looking out for Victoria, and Sarah is a weird thing that I don't know how to feel about her yet.
You know what is interesting? Like we haven't talked about this a lot, but the characters that have fallen seeds year over year, right? They were a much higher seed last year than they were this year. I think that the highest among those is Amy Dallin, the Red Queen, who I believe was a 3 seed last year, has fallen all the way to a 10 seed and has somehow magically wound up in the first round, matched against her lovely minion Dot. Who do you vote for in the Dot versus Amy Dallin matchup?
Well, I mean, Amy is a fantastic character. Really, truly amazing and interesting. I don't think I could ever vote for her for anything. and also Dot's interlude was great. So I'm voting for Dot. There, that's done.
I am voting for Amy. I can't believe I'm doing it. I am pretty confident that Amy is not going to make it near as far in this bracket as she is in the past. As much as I hate Amy, I'm supposed to hate Amy, and therefore that's a good character right there.
That's true. That's how that works. So that's how books work.
That's how book work. That's how book work. So voting for Amy. There we go. Any more of these you want to talk about?
No. I mean, you've definitely got some interesting ones in here. It's forcing me to confront like what I prioritize in characters, which is fun.
Sure.
But like you said, we could do this all day. So I think that's probably enough for one night.
Yeah, next week we're going to be down to 16 matchups, and I think that's much more reasonable for us to kind of walk through one at a time. Another thing we're going to do next week is we're going to talk through the results of this round a little bit, and we're going to read some of your comments. So if you have voted already but have not left comments, leave comments. If you haven't voted yet, go to doofmedia.com/marchmadness, look at all 32 matchups, vote, and then write comments in there because we're going to read some of them. And I've been reading a few of them, Matt, and so far we got some pretty good ones.
Great.
So please keep leaving those comments. Please keep voting. I hope you guys enjoy this. I think this is a lot of fun to do. I have a lot of fun doing it each year. So please enjoy it. Please don't take it too seriously. Please don't get mad at me if your character is not included. There's a lot of characters in this book, and I had 64 slots.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Sounds fair.
All right. So
cool.
Once again, that voting will be up till Sunday at around 5:00 Central Time, and that's when I will tabulate the results, and the next round will open up.
Sounds good. I think that's it.
Yep, that is it.
That's all we got for you this week on We've Got Ward. You are all part of this show, so feel free to provide us with advice, questions, or thoughts on this week's reading.
You can reach out to us via our email address at gotwormpod@gmail.com or on our Twitter account at gotwormpod. My personal Twitter is at scottdaily85, and Matt's is at voted for Amy. More Dinamel.
Oh my God. If you're not already subscribed to We've Got Ward, we strongly recommend you do so and never miss an episode. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else in the world that you can listen to podcasts.
And as always, you can find this and all the other shows we do over at doofmedia.com. That's where you can find Deep Impact for at least, well, I mean, it's going to be there forever, but you can find new episodes of that only up until this weekend. And that's also where you'll find all the details about All Packed Up, including special guest Wildbow.
Very exciting.
I just looked it up. 3 p.m. Central Time. 3 p.m. Central Time is when Wildbow will be appearing on Deep Impact. So, or All Packed Up. You know what I meant. So
I do.
Once again, we will have the schedule in the show notes, and hopefully we'll see all of you there. Friday for me, Saturday for the Australians. It's so confusing.
Yeah.
Time zones are bad.
That really is why you're better off just looking at the calendar.
Yeah. Well, Elliot did a cool thing with the calendar where it detects your time zone and just gives you all the times in your time zone. So you don't even have to fucking worry about it. It's awesome.
Perfection. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, if you like any of our shows and you want to support them, consider donating to patreon.com/doofmedia. Supporting us on Patreon at the $20 level per month gets you the power to force us to watch a movie or short story of your choice and do an episode about it on our other podcast, The Doof Media. What? No, The Doof Cast. The Doof Cast.
The Doof Media.
That's not right. And anyway, that also gives you access to the voting in all the fan art contests and being able to participate in the Discord chat. And of course, while you're over there on Patreon, go to patreon.com/wildbow and donate to him as well. This is his world. We're just playing in it media. Special thanks to new patrons.
It took me a second to figure out what you did there.
That
was good.
I don't know if that was anything. Special thanks to new patrons this week. Badoofs, Sarah L. What the fuck is wrong with me? Crystal L. and Crispy. Doof Dancers, Nao, and John, and new Doof Warrior, Tim the Enchanter. We really appreciate y'all, and I'm sorry that I fucked up reading your names. That's embarrassing.
It was a long episode, guys.
It was.
So we're a mess right now. We're sorry, but you are all amazing.
Yes, you are.
And of course, if you cannot afford to donate right now, that is absolutely okay. You can instead help us out by sharing the podcast, sharing Ward, sharing all of this, sharing doofmedia.com on social media, on normal media, on the media of your mouth when you open it up and words come out to other people's ears.
That's right.
You can also help us out by heading on over to Apple Podcasts or Stitcher and leaving us a rating and a review. Those really do help us, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's it for this week. Next week, we will continue on with this probably final arc of Ward.
Yes, when will we see the Chris moment? Will we see it? What will it look like? What will happen next?
Can't wait.